Maya sat at the back of the classroom, her palms slightly sweaty as she stared at the front of the room. Mrs. Thompson, the English teacher, was in the middle of discussing the upcoming career day, which had been announced as a mandatory event for all students. It was one of those days when Maya wished she could just blend into the background, avoid speaking up, and get through the lesson without drawing attention to herself. But today was different. Maya's mind was buzzing with thoughts of her father. Sergeant David Carter. He worked at the Pentagon, a place that few people outside of government circles ever really understood. To her, he was simply Dad, a figure who balanced long hours of service to the country with moments of warmth, wisdom, and love. He was the one who encouraged her to stay strong and follow her dreams, no matter what people thought. But in this room full of classmates who often ridiculed her quiet nature, she felt like a stranger in her own skin. And then, Mrs. Thompson's voice broke through her thoughts. "All right, class," Mrs. Thompson said, "for career day, each of you needs to bring in a parent or guardian to speak about their job. I want to hear about your ambitions, what you want to become when you grow up, and how your parents' work has shaped you." Maya could feel the unease creeping up on her again. She knew some of the kids in the class, like Mark and his group of friends, would probably bring in parents who were lawyers or doctors, the usual respectable professions that made for easy conversation. But Maya? She didn't want to talk about her father's job as a military officer. She'd heard too many people question his worth simply because of his profession. And while his work at the Pentagon was something to be proud of, she had never felt comfortable bragging about it. But as the classroom buzzed with chatter, something inside Maya stirred. She had been silent too long. For once, she decided to speak her truth. "My dad works at the Pentagon," Maya said softly, trying not to draw attention to herself but wanting to make sure she said it clearly. "He's in the military, and he's been there for a long time." The room immediately quieted. Maya's heart raced, her voice barely audible now, but her words hung in the air. Mrs. Thompson, who had been scribbling notes on the whiteboard, suddenly stopped and turned toward Maya. A smirk crept across her face. "The Pentagon?" Mrs. Thompson asked, raising an eyebrow. "Are you sure, Maya? That's a pretty big claim for someone like you." The other students in the class, who had been half listening until then, shifted in their seats, their eyes now focused on Maya. Mark, the class clown, leaned over to whisper something to his friend Jason, and the two of them chuckled, exchanging knowing glances. Maya's cheeks flushed with embarrassment, but she didn't back down. She knew that Mrs. Thompson's words were meant to belittle her, to reduce her to nothing more than a girl with wild stories. But she wasn't going to let that happen. Her father's work mattered, and she had a right to be proud of him. "I'm not lying," Maya said, a little louder this time. "He's worked there for years. He's important." Mrs. Thompson's smile widened, but it was the kind of smile that made you feel small, like she had won something before the game had even started. "Maya, sweetie, we all know you like to dream big. But, really? The Pentagon?" A few snickers echoed from the front of the room. Maya's hands curled into fists under the desk. She could feel the weight of their eyes, their doubt, pushing down on her. It stung. The humiliation flooded over her, and she felt as though she was shrinking, getting smaller and smaller under the intense scrutiny. "That's enough," Mrs. Thompson said, brushing her hands together in mock dismissal. "I'm sure your dad is very proud of you, Maya, but let's be realistic here. The Pentagon is an elite place. Are you sure you're not confusing your dad with someone else?" Maya's throat tightened. She could feel her heart hammering in her chest. Every inch of her wanted to say something, to shout, to make everyone believe her, but all she could do was stare at Mrs. Thompson, her face a mixture of hurt and disbelief. I don't need to prove anything," Maya finally muttered, her voice barely above a whisper. Mrs. Thompson simply nodded and turned back to the whiteboard, clearly dismissing Maya's words as nothing more than a fantasy. The rest of the class, however, had not forgotten. The whispers began to spread, like wildfire, as students turned to each other and whispered about Maya's wild claim. Mark threw in a couple of jabs about Maya's overactive imagination, and a few students laughed, leaning back in their chairs. Maya sank lower into her seat, her stomach twisting with the feeling of being out of place, of being seen as someone who didn't belong. She felt invisible, like she was speaking into an empty void. The more she tried to justify her father's position, the more the doubt in their eyes grew. As the bell rang, signaling the end of class, Maya quickly packed her bag, trying to avoid the eyes that followed her. She didn't want to be here anymore. She didn't want to face the laughter or the mocking glances. Maya, Jasmine called, snapping Maya out of her thoughts. She was one of the few people who didn't judge her. Wait up. Maya turned to see her best friend rushing toward her. Jasmine's face was concerned, her dark eyes filled with sympathy. Don't let her get to you, Jasmine said softly, her voice comforting. You know she's just jealous. Don't mind what she said. I don't know, Maya muttered, glancing back at Mrs. Thompson, who was now engaged in a conversation with some of the other teachers. It felt like everyone believed her, Jasmine. Like no one even cares what I said. Jasmine placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. You know your dad's amazing, right? And when career day comes, everyone will see it for themselves. Maya forced a smile, though the doubt in her heart remained. Could she really show them? Could she really prove herself when everyone seemed so eager to tear her down? Just wait, Jasmine said with a wink. You'll have your chance. But as Maya walked out of the classroom and into the crowded hallway, a thought nagged at the back of her mind: would anyone really believe her? The world had just been shaken up for Maya Carter. And she was about to prove that sometimes, the truth is stranger, and more powerful, than anyone can imagine. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Maya Carter had always been a quiet girl. Not shy, but reserved, a silent observer who would rather read a book or lose herself in the rhythms of music than engage in meaningless chatter. She had never liked to boast, but something about career day changed everything. It wasn't just about her father's job at the Pentagon. It was about how everyone saw her. Growing up, Maya had never known a life of luxury. Her family wasn't wealthy, and she didn't expect to be treated as special, even though her father's work was important. To most of her classmates, military life seemed distant, like a concept they only heard about in movies. For Maya, it was a part of her everyday existence. Sergeant David Carter wasn't just a figure in a uniform to her, he was the man who woke up early, kissed her good morning, and promised to always be there, even when his job kept him away for long stretches. The military had always been a significant part of her family. Her mother, Janet Carter, was a school teacher, patient, kind, and dedicated to her students, but also a woman who understood the cost of being a military spouse. She had learned early on how to be both mother and father when David was away, how to hold down the fort and maintain some sense of normalcy for Maya and her younger brother, Evan. Maya's earliest memories were of moving from base to base, of standing in a room full of unfamiliar faces and then quickly saying goodbye to them, moving to another city, another house. But one thing that remained constant was her father's love and his pride in his work. It was a pride that always felt bigger than just a job, it was about serving something greater than himself. For Maya, growing up in that world meant understanding sacrifice in ways that other children her age probably never did. It wasn't just about wearing a uniform or saying, "I'm proud to serve." It was about understanding the long hours, the missed birthdays, the holidays spent apart, and the nights when her father wouldn't be home because he was on duty. Her father's career had come at a cost. Maya remembered the long drives to the airport, the way her father would hold her tight and promise, "I'll be back soon, kiddo. Keep your chin up, okay?" She never quite understood why her father had to leave so often. But the one thing her father had always emphasized was the importance of staying grounded, of never letting her world be defined by his work. "You're more than my daughter, Maya," he would tell her, you're your own person. Don't let anyone ever make you feel like you have to live in my shadow. Maya clung to that advice, though it wasn't always easy. She loved her father more than anything in the world. He was everything to her: protector, role model, teacher. But sometimes, the constant moving, the uncertainty, left her feeling adrift. She couldn't help but wonder if the other kids at school, the ones with their normal lives and normal families, ever felt the same way. Did they ever miss their parents as much as she missed her father when he was away? At school, Maya didn't talk about her father much. She never wanted to seem like she was bragging or showing off. Her friends, Jasmine included, knew the basics, that her dad worked in the military and that he was important. But Maya didn't often mention the Pentagon, not because she didn't want to, but because she didn't want anyone to assume she was just the military kid who had everything handed to her. She wasn't looking for special treatment. She didn't want to be treated like some hero's daughter. She just wanted to be Maya, someone who was capable, intelligent, and worthy of respect, not just because of her father's rank, but because of who she was as a person. But sometimes it was hard to shake the feeling of being misunderstood. The other kids never seemed to get it: why her family was different, why her dad couldn't make it to parent-teacher conferences, or why she sometimes had to eat dinner alone when her mom was out doing her own work and David was overseas. They didn't understand the sacrifices, the distance, or the weight of having a parent who served at such a high level. Maya had always been close with her mother, who taught her that strength came not from boasting or showing off, but from the quiet resilience of doing what you had to do, no matter how difficult. Janet had raised both Maya and Evan with love and care, always making sure they understood the importance of being good people first, and never letting anyone treat them as less than. Her mother had learned to take on both roles when David was away, a feat that Maya admired deeply. But even Janet, strong as she was, couldn't shield her children from the sting of being seen as different. Maya could still remember the time in middle school when she tried to explain to her classmates why her father wasn't at her birthday party. One of her classmates had jokingly said, "Well, I guess he's off fighting in a war, right?" It wasn't a joke to Maya. The comment stung in a way she wasn't able to express at the time. Sure, her dad wasn't deployed in a war zone, but the comment, the lack of understanding, made her feel isolated in a way she hadn't been able to shake. It was a feeling that followed her to high school. And then, of course, there was the incident earlier today. Career Day. The moment that would define everything. Mrs. Thompson had made Maya feel small, just another girl who didn't belong, just another student with a big imagination. But the truth was, Maya had never needed to lie about her father's job. She didn't need to fabricate stories to gain approval. Her father was a man of integrity, a man who worked hard every day to serve his country. And she was proud of him, proud of everything he had achieved, proud of the sacrifices he'd made, and proud of the quiet dignity with which he carried himself. Maya's eyes drifted to the window as the memories played through her mind. She had never expected to stand out, never dreamed that her father's work would one day become the focal point of a high school controversy. She hadn't even realized how much it had bothered her to be misunderstood until that very moment in class. But now, she couldn't ignore it anymore. The truth was, she didn't just want her classmates to believe her. She wanted them to understand. To know that her father was more than a uniform, more than just a rank at the Pentagon. He was a man who had devoted his life to serving his country, and he had passed that sense of duty on to her. She wasn't ashamed of it. She was proud. And she wasn't going to let anyone take that away from her. The days after Mrs. Thompson's dismissive comment seemed to stretch endlessly for Maya. It wasn't just the ridicule, it was the way it made her question everything she had once been proud of. Career Day was getting closer, and each day brought with it a rising wave of doubt. She had been humiliated in front of her classmates, and the whispering that followed her through the halls only made it worse. Mark and his friends had taken every opportunity to poke fun at her, repeating her words in exaggerated voices, mocking her claim about her father. "Hey, Maya, does your dad work at the Pentagon, too? Or maybe he's the president's bodyguard?" Mark would say, his voice dripping with sarcasm. Maya just kept her head down, doing her best to ignore the comments. But the damage had already been done. She couldn't shake the feeling that no one believed her. Not even Jasmine, the one person she had always been able to count on, could ease the discomfort that seemed to hang over her like a cloud. One afternoon, as Maya sat in her third-period math class, she felt her phone buzz in her pocket. It was a message from her dad. Her heart skipped a beat. "Hey, kiddo. Big day tomorrow. I'll be home tonight. Get ready to show them what you're made of." Maya stared at the message for a moment, a warmth spreading through her chest. Her father, even from a distance, always knew how to encourage her. But her excitement was quickly overshadowed by the lingering tension in the pit of her stomach. She didn't know if she was ready to face the storm that was building around her at school. She wasn't sure if anyone would ever take her seriously. That evening, as she sat at the kitchen table, picking at her food, her mother Janet sat across from her, sipping her tea. Janet had noticed the change in Maya's demeanor over the past few days. She hadn't said much, but Maya knew her mother was perceptive. Janet had always been able to read her like an open book. "What's on your mind, sweetheart?" Janet asked gently, setting her cup down. Maya hesitated, her fingers curling around the edge of her glass. "It's nothing, Mom. Just, school stuff." Janet didn't press her. She simply leaned forward and smiled, the warm expression one Maya had always found reassuring. "You know you can talk to me about anything, right?" Maya nodded, but the words caught in her throat. How could she explain to her mother what had been happening at school? How could she tell her about the laughter, the teasing, and the way her classmates treated her like she was lying? Even though her mother had always taught her to stand strong, Maya felt so small in that moment. Just promise me you won't let them get to you," Janet said, her voice steady and filled with conviction. "Your dad and I are proud of you, Maya. You don't need to prove anything to anyone." Maya looked up at her mother, trying to smile but failing. She could feel the tears threatening to well up, and she quickly blinked them away. "I know, Mom. I know you're proud. But it's different at school. No one believes me. Mrs. Thompson doesn't even take me seriously, and Mark and the others are just waiting for me to mess up. It's like I'm invisible." Janet reached across the table and took Maya's hand. "You're never invisible to me, Maya. You're everything. You don't need their approval. But I know that's hard. People can be cruel when they don't understand something. But you have the truth on your side. And that truth, sweetheart, will carry you through this." The words were comforting, but Maya couldn't shake the feeling that the truth wouldn't be enough. The more she thought about it, the more frustrated she became. She wanted to prove herself, not just to Mrs. Thompson, but to everyone who had doubted her. She wanted them to see that she wasn't just the quiet girl in the back of the class. She wasn't just the daughter of a man who worked at the Pentagon. She was Maya Carter, and she was strong, smart, and capable of anything. As she lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, she thought about the next day. Career day was coming. Her father had promised he would be home. She knew he had some important work to do, but he had made a promise to her that he would be there. He had always kept his promises. And maybe, just maybe, his presence would be the turning point she needed. The next morning, Maya woke up with a sense of determination she hadn't felt in days. She didn't care if people made fun of her or called her a liar. She didn't care if Mrs. Thompson didn't believe her. What mattered was that her father was coming. And no matter how hard they tried to tear her down, she would not let them take her pride in her family away from her. She dressed quickly, tying her hair back into a neat ponytail. When her mother walked into the kitchen, Maya was already seated, a serious look on her face. "I'm ready, Mom," she said, her voice firm. Janet smiled, though there was a hint of concern in her eyes. "I know you are, sweetheart. You're ready to show them who you are." At school, the whispers and jokes followed Maya all the way to her homeroom. She heard Mark's voice from behind her, throwing out another mock version of her words. But this time, Maya didn't flinch. She walked straight into the room, head held high. When Mrs. Thompson looked up from her desk, Maya met her gaze without hesitation. The teacher's eyes flickered with recognition, but there was no smirk this time. She simply nodded, as if Maya's presence was an afterthought. But Maya didn't care. Not today. Today was her day. The clock ticked slowly. Students trickled in, some talking excitedly about the parent presentations that were to come. And then, as the bell rang to signal the start of career day, the door opened, and Maya's father walked into the classroom. The entire room went silent. David Carter, dressed in a sharp, military uniform, stood tall and confident in the doorway, his eyes scanning the room. His presence was commanding, but there was a warmth in his smile as he locked eyes with Maya. "Good morning," he said, his voice strong yet gentle, his eyes never leaving his daughter. Maya could barely believe it. Her father had come through. He was here. And, for the first time in days, Maya felt something inside her shift. Maybe this would be the moment when everything changed. The silence in the classroom was deafening as Sergeant David Carter stepped forward, his uniform crisp, his posture as straight as an arrow. He was a man who commanded respect without saying a word, a quality Maya had always admired about him. As he entered the room, the students seemed to collectively hold their breath, unsure of how to react. For a moment, the atmosphere felt suspended in time, as if the entire room was waiting for the story to unfold. Maya stood frozen, her heart pounding in her chest. She had always known her father was a man of importance, but seeing him in this setting, among her classmates, her teacher, people who had mocked her just days before, was a surreal experience. She had always tried to shield her family from the ridicule, tried to protect her father's reputation, but now, here he was, stepping into the very place that had torn her down. And in that moment, something inside her shifted. "Class, may I introduce Sergeant David Carter," Mrs. Thompson said, her voice breaking the silence. "He's Maya's father, and today he's going to share a little bit about his work." Maya's breath caught in her throat. She had expected her father to speak with confidence, but she hadn't expected him to command the room so effortlessly. He wasn't just a soldier, he was a leader, and his presence seemed to fill the space, making everything else feel less important. David's gaze swept across the room, landing on the students who had once mocked Maya. His eyes were calm but unyielding, a quiet strength emanating from his every movement. When he spoke, his voice was steady, but there was an edge of warmth that made the students lean in, captivated by his words. "Thank you, Mrs. Thompson. It's a pleasure to be here," he began, his gaze lingering on Maya for a moment before moving on to the rest of the class. "I'm Sergeant David Carter, and I work at the Pentagon. My role is to ensure that our national security remains intact, to support the people who defend our country, and to make sure that my team has the resources they need to succeed." He paused for a moment, allowing his words to sink in. Maya could feel the room's energy shift, the students no longer looking at her with skepticism or doubt, but with a quiet respect. It was as if her father's presence had instantly validated everything she had said. "But more importantly," David continued, his voice softer now, "I'm a father. And no matter what I do at work, that's always the most important role I'll ever have. I've spent countless hours away from my family, serving my country, but nothing compares to the joy of coming home and being with my kids. Maya, Evan, you're the reason I do what I do." The words hit Maya like a wave, and she suddenly felt a lump in her throat. She had never heard her father speak so openly about his love for his children, not in front of anyone, not like this. The students, who had once doubted her, now saw a different side of the man she knew as her dad, not just a military figure, but a loving parent who had sacrificed so much for his family. David went on to explain the importance of teamwork, of how everyone in his unit had to work together to achieve a common goal. He spoke with such passion, such conviction, that even the most skeptical students found themselves captivated. Maya watched as the faces of her classmates slowly changed, as the looks of disbelief melted into something more sincere. They were listening now. They were beginning to understand. As the presentation continued, Maya's nerves began to settle. Her father was doing exactly what she had hoped, showing everyone the truth, proving that what she had said about him wasn't just some fantasy. He wasn't just a man in a uniform, he was a person, with a family, with a life beyond his work. When the session came to a close, Mrs. Thompson stood up, clapping her hands with a smile that Maya hadn't seen before. "Thank you, Sergeant Carter, for that insightful and inspiring presentation. We're grateful for your time today." The room erupted in applause, and Maya couldn't help but smile. It wasn't just polite clapping, it was genuine. The students, who had once ridiculed her, were now showing respect. It was as if the story of her father had opened their eyes, had made them see that she wasn't just some girl with a tall tale. She was Maya Carter, and her father's work mattered. As the bell rang, signaling the end of career day, the students filed out of the room, chatting excitedly among themselves. Maya stood near the door, feeling a sense of accomplishment she hadn't known was possible. She had expected her classmates to remain distant, to continue treating her like the odd one out. But instead, they approached her with a newfound respect, their earlier mockery gone. "Your dad, he's really impressive," Maya, one of the girls from her history class, Sarah, said shyly. "I didn't realize how important his job was." Maya smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. "Yeah, he's pretty amazing," she said softly. "I'm really proud of him." Mark, the boy who had mocked her the most, was one of the last to leave the room. He stopped in front of her, his expression no longer one of arrogance, but of genuine admiration. "Hey, Maya, I didn't know. I guess I kind of underestimated your dad. He's a big deal, huh?" Maya met his gaze, her heart racing. "Yeah, he is," she replied, her voice steady. "But more than that, he's my dad. And that's what matters to me." Mark nodded, his eyes softening. "I get it now. I'm sorry about before." Maya simply nodded in return, a small but genuine smile tugging at the corners of her lips. "It's okay," she said, her voice calm. "Thanks for listening." As the last of her classmates filed out of the room, Maya felt a sense of relief wash over her. For the first time in days, she didn't feel like an outsider. She didn't feel small. She felt seen, understood, and, most importantly, respected. And it wasn't just because her father had come to school and set the record straight. It was because, for the first time, Maya had stood her ground. She hadn't let the doubt and ridicule define her. She had shown everyone that her father's work, and her family's sacrifices, were worthy of respect. As she packed up her things, she felt a presence behind her. She turned to see her father standing in the doorway, a proud smile on his face. "You did great, kiddo," he said, ruffling her hair affectionately. Maya felt a swell of pride in her chest. "Thanks, Dad. You were amazing." David stepped closer and lowered his voice, so only she could hear. "You're amazing too. And don't you ever forget it." Maya smiled up at him, feeling stronger than she had in days. The journey wasn't over, but this was a turning point. She had faced the conflict head-on and come out victorious. The road ahead might still be difficult, but Maya knew she could handle it. She wasn't just the daughter of a military officer, she was Maya Carter, and that was more than enough. The days following career day felt like a whirlwind. Maya's father's visit had done more than she could have imagined. The whispers and jeers had quieted, replaced by an uncomfortable but respectful silence. Her classmates now treated her differently, but not in the way she had expected. The respect was there, yes, but so was an air of disbelief, like they couldn't quite reconcile the image of the quiet, reserved Maya with the daughter of a man who worked at the Pentagon. It felt like a heavy weight that Maya hadn't anticipated. As she walked through the halls of her school, the once familiar faces now felt distant. It wasn't that she had become an outcast, but something had shifted. The bond she'd once shared with her classmates now seemed strained. There were moments when she felt their eyes on her, moments when she could tell they were still unsure if they truly believed the stories she had told them. Even though they were no longer mocking her, there was still a distance, an invisible barrier between her and everyone else. Maya didn't mind it so much, though. What mattered was that her father had proven his presence. The world now knew the truth. She had no reason to doubt herself anymore, right? Yet, as she lay in bed that night, she couldn't shake the feeling of emptiness that seemed to settle deep in her chest. She knew something was missing. Her father had always been a pillar of strength in her life, but he wasn't always there. His work required him to be away, sometimes for weeks, sometimes for months. Maya had grown accustomed to the long stretches of time without him. She'd learned to be strong on her own, relying on her mother's steady presence to help fill the gaps. But now, after his visit to school, Maya found herself feeling conflicted. The pride she had felt that day, the way her father had stood tall and confident, was fading into a quiet longing. A longing for something more than just a visit, more than just words of encouragement. For a moment, Maya let herself drift into the memories of her younger years, back when her father would be home more often. When he wasn't on duty, he would play games with her, take her to the park, and they would talk about anything and everything. It wasn't just about his work at the Pentagon, it was about the moments they shared. Those small, simple moments that made her feel like she wasn't alone, that made her feel seen. But as Maya sat up in bed that night, her thoughts interrupted by the soft buzz of her phone, her heart skipped a beat. It was a message from her father. "Hey, kiddo. I know you've been working hard. I'm really proud of you. I'll be back soon, and we'll celebrate. I miss you." Maya stared at the message, her heart aching with a mixture of pride and sadness. Her father's words were always comforting, always reassuring, but tonight, they felt like a reminder of the time they had lost. She replied, her fingers trembling as she typed, "I miss you too, Dad. It's been tough without you here." Before she could think more about it, her phone buzzed again. It was a call. Her father's name flashed across the screen. Maya's heart soared as she answered quickly. "Dad?" Her voice was tentative, as if she hadn't spoken to him in forever. But she had, just a few days ago. Why did it feel so distant now? "Hey, kiddo. It's me." His voice, deep and warm, filled the line, and suddenly, the world felt a little less empty. "I miss you," Maya whispered, not realizing how much she had been holding back until the words slipped out. "I miss you too," he replied, and for a moment, they both sat in the quiet comfort of the shared silence. It wasn't long before her father spoke again, his tone serious yet soft. "I know it's tough, Maya. I wish I could be there more. But I'm proud of you. I want you to always remember that, no matter what anyone else says." Maya could feel her eyes stinging with the threat of tears. She hadn't realized how badly she needed to hear those words, how much she needed to hear her father tell her that he was proud of her. "I know, Dad," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "It's just, sometimes I feel like I'm not enough. Like no one really believes in me. Even after career day, it's still hard. Everyone looks at me like I'm different." David was quiet for a moment, and Maya could almost feel him thinking through his words. "Maya, sometimes, people are going to doubt you. They're going to question your story, your truth, because they don't understand. But that's okay. You know who you are, and that's what matters most. And I'm always going to be here for you, even when I can't physically be there. You don't have to do this alone." Maya sniffed, wiping away a tear. She hadn't realized how much she had been holding in, how much she had been carrying on her own. The weight of being the different one, the one with the father at the Pentagon, had always been heavy, but she had never allowed herself to truly feel it until now. "You're right, Dad," she said, her voice firmer now, though still laced with emotion. "I've got this. I can handle it. That's my girl, David replied, his voice full of pride. You're stronger than you know. And no matter where I am, I'll always have your back. Always. As the conversation wound down and they said their goodbyes, Maya hung up the phone, feeling a sense of peace settle over her. It wasn't enough to fix everything, but for the first time in days, she felt grounded. She wasn't alone in this, even when it felt like she was. Her father's words, his unwavering belief in her, were the anchor she needed. The next day at school, Maya walked through the halls with a new sense of confidence. The whispers were still there, but they no longer had the power to hurt her. She had found her strength again. She knew her father believed in her, and now it was time for her to believe in herself. In homeroom, Mrs. Thompson called on her to give a presentation about her father's work. Maya stood in front of the class, her heart steady, her shoulders back. As she spoke about the sacrifices her father made, the work he did at the Pentagon, and the lessons she had learned from him, she felt the weight of all the doubt she had once carried lift from her shoulders. She wasn't just telling a story. She was sharing her truth. And for the first time in a long time, Maya knew it was enough. The following weeks passed in a blur. Maya returned to school with a quiet sense of resolve, her confidence steadily growing with each passing day. She had done it. She had faced her biggest fears and stood her ground. The weight of the ridicule that had once made her shrink in fear now felt lighter, as if she had been carrying a heavy burden and was finally free of it. But freedom, Maya soon realized, didn't always come without its complications. Though the students at school had shifted in their treatment of her, there were still moments of hesitation. At lunch, some of the same girls who had once snickered behind her back now gave her tentative smiles, but Maya could sense the uncertainty in their eyes. They hadn't fully figured her out yet. It wasn't just her classmates, it was her own reflection. After so many years of feeling like an outsider, Maya found herself questioning what it meant to belong. Her conversations with her father had become more frequent, with him calling whenever he had a free moment. They talked about everything: school, life, his work, and even the simple things, like her upcoming plans for the weekend. Those conversations were always a balm to her soul, but they also revealed a truth she couldn't ignore: he wasn't always going to be there. The phone calls, the brief texts, the messages of encouragement, they didn't erase the fact that her father's career took him far away for long periods. It was the price of his service, the price of his dedication. Maya had always understood that. She had known, deep down, that his job was important, that it was necessary, and that it took him away from home. But the reality of living without him, of carrying on without the one person who had always been there for her, felt more challenging than ever before. One Friday afternoon, Maya found herself at the kitchen table, scribbling in her journal as she tried to organize her thoughts. Her mother, Simone, had gone out for groceries, leaving Maya alone in the house. The quiet was peaceful, but it made her think. Thinking about her father's absence. Thinking about the future. As her pen traced the page, she paused. A familiar, heavy feeling washed over her, a sense of longing for something more, something deeper than the words of encouragement and phone calls. It wasn't enough. Maya had always been the strong one, the one who kept things together, who didn't let anything shake her foundation. But even the strongest foundations needed support. She hadn't realized how much she relied on her father's presence, how much his belief in her fueled her sense of self-worth, until it was no longer there in the way she wanted it to be. Her thoughts were interrupted by a sudden knock at the door. Maya glanced up, confused. Who could it be? She wasn't expecting anyone. Standing up, she walked toward the door, her curiosity piqued. When she opened it, her heart skipped a beat. It was her father. Maya, David said with a smile, his military uniform slightly wrinkled from his long journey home, but his presence still commanding, strong, and steady. I thought I'd surprise you. I've got the weekend off. Maya stood there for a moment, her mouth dry, her heart pounding in her chest. Dad? Her voice cracked as the flood of emotions she had been holding back all week bubbled to the surface. David stepped forward, wrapping her in a warm embrace. "Yeah, it's me, kiddo. I know it's been a while, but I'm here now." Maya didn't know how long they stood there, in the doorway, but when she pulled away, she found herself smiling. Her father's presence, more than anything, gave her a sense of peace that words couldn't quite capture. "Thank you for coming," Maya whispered, a tear escaping down her cheek. She wiped it away quickly, embarrassed, but her father only smiled, a glint of understanding in his eyes. "You don't have to thank me, Maya," he said gently. "I'm your dad. And you don't have to carry everything on your own. I'm here whenever you need me. I always will be." Maya swallowed hard, trying to steady her emotions. The weight of everything she had been holding inside, the quiet fear, the worry, the doubt, it all came rushing forward, and for the first time in weeks, she allowed herself to let go. She wasn't strong all the time, and that was okay. "I don't know how to do this without you sometimes, Dad," she admitted, her voice small but honest. "I don't know how to keep moving forward without feeling like I'm always doing it alone." David cupped her face in his hands, his gaze steady and full of love. "You're never alone, Maya. Not really. You've got me, and you've got your mom. And more than that, you've got yourself. You're stronger than you realize, but you don't have to be strong all the time. That's not what matters. What matters is that you keep moving forward, no matter what." Maya nodded, her chest tight, but her heart lighter. "I don't know how to let go of feeling like I have to be perfect, though. Like I can't show weakness, because that's what everyone expects of me." David smiled softly. "Perfection doesn't exist, Maya. You don't have to meet anyone else's expectations. You just have to meet your own. And your own are already enough." It was in that moment, as her father held her close, that Maya realized the depth of what he was saying. It wasn't just about the world's perception of her, or even the expectations of her peers. It was about her perception of herself. Her strength wasn't in perfection, it was in her ability to persevere, to keep going despite the hurdles. Her value didn't lie in what others thought of her, it lay in her resilience and the love that surrounded her. As they sat down together at the kitchen table, catching up on everything that had happened since he left, Maya felt a sense of peace settle over her. It wasn't the kind of peace that erased the difficulties she had faced. It wasn't the kind of peace that made everything feel perfect. But it was the kind of peace that allowed her to see clearly. She wasn't alone. She had a family that loved her. She had a father who believed in her. And most importantly, she had herself, a strong, capable young woman who was learning, day by day, to embrace her flaws, to embrace her humanity. And that, Maya realized, was more than enough. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would still be challenges, still be moments of doubt and fear. But Maya knew now that she was never truly alone. She had the strength to face whatever came next, because she was loved, because she was enough. And for the first time in a long time, that was all she needed to know. It had been a month since her father's surprise visit, and life at school had returned to a strange sort of normal. Maya had worked through the sting of being misunderstood, the loneliness of feeling like an outsider, and had even begun to rebuild some of the relationships with her classmates. But the truth was, even though things had calmed down, there was still a part of Maya that couldn't shake the feeling of being different. That feeling crept back in when she least expected it, especially in the most casual moments, like when she sat in the lunchroom, watching the way her peers laughed and joked with each other. She used to be part of those conversations, but now she felt like an observer. She wasn't quite sure where she fit anymore. There was one person in particular who seemed to be making an effort to change things, though. Nicole, one of the girls who had been part of the group that once teased her, had started sitting with Maya at lunch. At first, Maya was skeptical. She wasn't sure if Nicole's sudden interest was genuine or just a passing phase, a way to alleviate her guilt for what had happened. But Nicole was persistent. She smiled at Maya in the halls, asked her how her day was going, and had even offered to study with her for an upcoming science test. Maya couldn't help but feel a twinge of hesitation. She had been hurt by people in the past. She had been let down before by people who had acted like her friends, only to turn on her when it suited them. Could she really trust Nicole? "Hey, Maya," Nicole said one afternoon, sliding into the seat next to her at lunch. "I know things have been kind of weird between us, and I just wanted to say. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to make you feel like you didn't belong." Maya looked up, surprised by Nicole's sincerity. Nicole's eyes were soft, her voice quiet but earnest. I don't really know what to say," Maya responded, unsure of how to navigate this new territory. She hadn't expected this kind of apology, especially from someone who had been a part of the group that had once made her life miserable. "I guess. I appreciate it. I didn't expect you to say that." Nicole smiled, her eyes filled with understanding. "I know I wasn't always nice to you. And I realize now that what we did was wrong. I guess I just didn't know what it was like to be on the receiving end of it. But you're a good person, Maya. And I can't keep pretending like I didn't know that." Maya's mind raced, processing Nicole's words. Was this real? Could she really forgive her? Could she allow herself to trust again? She remembered the hurtful words, the laughs behind her back, and how her world had seemed to shrink whenever they made her feel invisible. But now, here was Nicole, looking at her with an expression that was hard to ignore. Nicole had made mistakes, just like Maya had, but could she be trusted to not make the same ones again? "I'm still figuring things out, Nicole," Maya said slowly, trying to be honest. "But I appreciate you saying that. I don't know if we can go back to how things were before, but I'm willing to give you a chance." Nicole's eyes lit up with relief. "That means a lot. I promise I won't let you down." As the days passed, Maya found herself allowing Nicole to get closer. They studied together for their upcoming exams, ate lunch together every day, and even started walking home together in the afternoons. Maya still had moments of doubt, moments when she wondered if this was all just a phase, or if Nicole's change of heart would last, but for now, she decided to let it unfold. She couldn't live her life in constant fear of betrayal. Maybe, just maybe, people could change. One Friday afternoon, after a particularly grueling math test, Nicole invited Maya to a party. It was the kind of party Maya had always avoided, the type of gathering where cliques formed, and the social hierarchy was on full display. She had always felt like an outsider in those settings, but this time, things felt different. Nicole had invited her as a friend, not out of obligation or guilt, but because she genuinely wanted Maya to come. Maya hesitated. She hadn't been to a party like this since middle school, and even then, she had spent most of the time standing in the corner, wishing she could disappear. But this was different. Maya wasn't the same person she had been back then. She had found strength in herself, in her family, and in her own story. Maybe, just maybe, she could go and feel like she belonged. "I don't know," Maya said, tapping her pencil nervously against her notebook. "I haven't been to one of these in forever, and I'm not sure if I'm up for it." Nicole, sensing her hesitation, leaned in with a grin. "It's not going to be like the ones you remember, I promise. It's just a bunch of us hanging out, playing music, eating pizza. Nothing crazy, just fun." Maya looked at Nicole, searching her face for any sign of insincerity, but all she saw was genuine excitement. For the first time in a long while, Maya felt a spark of curiosity, a feeling she hadn't experienced when it came to social events. Maybe she could try, just for once, to step out of her comfort zone. She wasn't the same girl she had been before her father's visit. She had grown stronger, and it was time to prove it to herself. "Okay, I'll go," Maya said, a nervous but excited smile spreading across her face. The night of the party arrived, and Maya stood in front of her mirror, adjusting her clothes. Her mom had given her the go-ahead, with a reminder to be careful and call if she needed a ride. Maya had always appreciated how supportive her mom was, but tonight, there was a sense of anxiety she couldn't shake. She wanted this to be different. She wanted to feel like she belonged, like she wasn't the odd one out. When Maya arrived at the party, she took a deep breath before stepping inside. The music was loud, the lights were bright, and the house was filled with kids from her school, all chatting, laughing, and enjoying themselves. She scanned the room, looking for Nicole, and when she found her, Maya felt a small wave of relief. "Hey, Maya." Nicole waved her over, her grin wide and inviting. "You made it." Maya gave her a small smile, her nerves still fluttering in her stomach. "Yeah, I did. This is different." Nicole chuckled. "I told you. Just relax and have fun. No pressure." As the night went on, Maya slowly began to let go of her reservations. She talked to more people than she had ever expected, laughed at jokes, and even danced a little when the music changed. It wasn't perfect, and there were still moments when she felt like she didn't fully belong. But something had shifted. The walls she had built around herself, the ones that kept her isolated, afraid of rejection, had started to come down, piece by piece. Maya wasn't alone. And maybe, just maybe, she was starting to believe that she could trust again. Maya's life seemed to be moving in a positive direction. She had begun to feel more comfortable at school, even made a new friend in Nicole, and her relationship with her father remained solid. Yet, as the weeks went by, there was still an undercurrent of uncertainty she couldn't fully escape. A quiet, nagging feeling that something was lurking beneath the surface, threatening to disrupt the delicate balance she had worked so hard to build. It was a crisp Friday afternoon when it all began to unravel. The bell rang at the end of the school day, signaling the start of the weekend. Maya packed up her things slowly, trying to put off the inevitable, her return home. She had grown accustomed to the silence that greeted her when she entered their house after school, her mom often working late or out running errands. Maya didn't mind the quiet, but sometimes, the stillness seemed to amplify her doubts, making her feel more alone than she actually was. "Hey, Maya," a voice interrupted her thoughts. She turned to see Nicole standing in the doorway of the classroom, a curious expression on her face. "Got a minute?" Maya smiled, grateful for the distraction. "Sure, what's up?" Nicole hesitated for a moment, then stepped into the classroom. "I just wanted to let you know, there's something going on with the group this weekend. It's a surprise thing, but I don't know, I feel like it's going to be fun, and I really want you to come." Maya tilted her head, intrigued. "What's the surprise?" Nicole's face flushed slightly, and she rubbed the back of her neck. "Well, I can't tell you everything, but some of the guys from school are throwing a party at someone's house on Saturday night. It's not going to be huge or anything. Just a small get-together." Maya immediately felt her stomach tighten. The thought of another party made her uneasy, especially when it involved some of the same people she'd been trying to rebuild relationships with. Nicole had been genuine, but the others? The ones who had once made her feel invisible, like a joke, were they still the same? Maya hesitated, uncertainty clouding her thoughts. "I don't know, Nicole. I mean, I've never really been good at these kinds of things." Nicole's eyes softened. "You won't be alone, I promise. It's just us. Nothing crazy, just hanging out. Besides, it could be fun to get out of your head for once." The words lingered in the air. "I'll think about it," Maya replied, unsure if she could really go through with it. She wanted to believe that things had changed, that people had changed, but the old fears still gripped her heart. Nicole smiled before walking off, leaving Maya to ponder her decision. Saturday came, and the internal debate raged within Maya. She had promised herself that she would stop letting fear dictate her choices, but as she stood in front of the mirror that evening, dressed in a simple black top and jeans, she felt the familiar weight of doubt bearing down on her. She thought of her dad's voice, his words about strength, about persevering, and wondered if this was a test of that strength. Maya's phone buzzed, breaking her out of her thoughts. It was a message from Nicole. "Nicole, hey, we're waiting for you. It's going to be fun. Don't let your doubt stop you from having a good time." Maya stared at the message for a long time, the cursor blinking as she pondered whether to respond. Her finger hovered over the keyboard, the tension building in her chest. She glanced at the clock, and with a deep breath, Maya made a decision. She was going to go. Not for anyone else, but for herself. To prove that she wasn't going to be paralyzed by the past. She was stronger than that. It wasn't an easy journey, but as she stepped into the house that evening, the noise of laughter and music filtering through the door, Maya felt the weight in her chest ease, just a little. She had taken the first step, now, all she had to do was show up. As soon as she entered the house, Nicole greeted her with a warm hug. "I'm glad you came," she said, her face lighting up. "I promise you're going to have a good time." Maya smiled, but a little part of her still felt like an outsider. The room was filled with familiar faces, most of them from her classes, but she couldn't shake the feeling that she didn't belong. "Come on, let's grab a drink," Nicole said, leading her toward the kitchen. "You look tense. I think a cold soda will help." Maya laughed softly, trying to calm her nerves. "Yeah, I'm definitely feeling a little on edge." As they made their way into the kitchen, Maya's eyes scanned the room, her mind racing. The group was mingling, a few people dancing to the music, others laughing and talking in small groups. But there was one person who caught her attention, Jared, one of the guys who had been a part of the group that had mocked her when everything had started to fall apart. He was sitting on the couch with a few of his friends, a beer in hand, laughing and talking. His gaze met hers for just a moment, and something shifted. The look he gave her wasn't one of mockery, but one of recognition. Something in his eyes seemed different, as if he, too, was aware of the unspoken tension between them. Maya's heart skipped a beat. Was this really going to be different? She didn't have time to analyze it further, as Nicole handed her a soda. "Take a seat. Relax. Let's enjoy the night." Maya sat down on the couch, trying her best to smile and engage with the conversation. But despite the efforts of those around her to make her feel included, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. She kept glancing back at Jared, wondering if he was going to say something, make a joke. But he never did. Instead, he simply looked at her occasionally, as though waiting for her to make the first move. Time passed slowly, the moments dragging on as Maya wrestled with her own internal tension. She wanted to have fun, she wanted to enjoy herself, but there was a part of her that couldn't let go of the old hurts. Suddenly, a loud voice broke through the music. Maya looked up just in time to see Jared stand up, his eyes locked onto hers. "I know we haven't exactly been on the best terms," Jared said, his voice carrying over the room. "But I want to apologize. For everything. What happened wasn't cool, and I know I was part of it." Maya's breath caught in her throat. She hadn't expected this. She hadn't expected an apology. From him of all people. Jared's eyes were sincere, and for the first time, Maya saw him not as the bully from her past, but as a person who had realized his mistakes. The room had fallen silent, all eyes on them as Jared continued. "I get it now," he said quietly. "What you were going through. I wasn't there when you needed someone, and I regret that." Maya felt a mixture of emotions swirl inside her. Shock. Relief. Anger. And something else, hope. For the first time in a long while, Maya allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, things could change. Maybe people could change. With a deep breath, she looked Jared in the eyes and nodded. "Thank you. For saying that." And for the first time, Maya truly felt like she was moving forward, not just for herself, but for everyone involved. The shadows of the past were beginning to lift. The weeks that followed Jared's unexpected apology felt like a turning point for Maya. For the first time in a long time, she didn't feel like she was constantly carrying the weight of the past on her shoulders. The walls she had built around herself, the ones that had kept people at a distance, the ones that had protected her from further pain, began to crumble, bit by bit. At school, things had shifted. The people who had once mocked her, like Jared, now seemed to genuinely want to make amends. They didn't treat her like an outsider or a joke. There was no more snickering behind her back or whispered comments as she passed by. Instead, there was respect. There was something raw and real in the way they spoke to her, in the way they acknowledged her presence as though she mattered. Nicole had become a constant companion during this time. They spent hours together after school, talking about everything from their favorite movies to their hopes for the future. Maya found herself opening up more and more, sharing pieces of her life she had kept hidden for so long. She no longer felt like she had to guard every word, every glance. She was learning to trust again. But even with all this change, there were still moments when Maya found herself questioning whether she truly belonged. Her confidence was growing, but it wasn't always easy to shake the scars of the past. There were still nights when she lay awake, wondering if it would all fall apart again. It was one of those nights when Maya's dad called her. He had been working late, as he often did, and had been quiet on the phone, his voice distant and tired. "Maya, how's everything going?" he asked, his tone softer than usual. Maya sat up in bed, pulling her knees to her chest. "It's okay, Dad. Actually, it's been better lately. I've been getting along with people at school." Her father's voice perked up at the news. "That's good to hear. I'm glad things are starting to look up." "Yeah," Maya said, hesitating. "It's weird, though. I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop. Like, I don't know if I'm really in yet. I'm still kind of on the outside, you know." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Maya, I know it's hard. It's never easy to feel like you don't belong. But remember, you've got a lot to offer, and the people who matter will see that." Maya smiled, comforted by her dad's words. "I'm trying. I really am." "I know you are," he said. "Just don't forget who you are, Maya. You're strong. And you don't need to prove anything to anyone. You already have everything you need inside of you." She closed her eyes, letting his words sink in. Her dad had always been her anchor, and in moments like these, she realized just how much she needed his steady presence. The next day at school, Maya's newfound sense of confidence was put to the test. It was lunchtime, and she was walking to the cafeteria when she noticed a group of girls from her class gathered at a table. They were laughing, eating, and chatting like nothing had changed. They seemed so effortlessly close, so comfortable in each other's company. And yet, Maya couldn't help but feel like she was still an outsider. Nicole wasn't there yet, so Maya stood by the entrance for a moment, unsure of what to do. Her heart beat a little faster as she thought about walking up to the table and joining in. Could she really do it? Could she really just sit down and be a part of the group, even though she still had that lingering fear of rejection? Before she could make up her mind, she heard a voice from behind her. "Hey, Maya. You gonna stand there all day, or are you coming to sit with us?" Maya turned to see Jared, a friendly grin on his face as he motioned toward the table. Her stomach flipped. He was talking to her. He was inviting her in. She blinked, surprised. Yeah. Sure." Jared stepped aside, making room for her at the table. Maya hesitated for a moment but then walked over, her feet feeling heavier than usual. As she sat down, the other girls gave her curious but warm glances. It was clear they hadn't been expecting her, but there was no hostility in their eyes. Instead, they made space for her, as though they had always wanted her to be a part of the group. "Hey, Maya," one of the girls said. "How's it going? We were just talking about the upcoming school dance. You thinking about going?" Maya felt a wave of warmth wash over her. She hadn't expected to be included in the conversation, let alone invited into the fold like this. For the first time in what felt like forever, she didn't feel like an outsider. She felt like she was part of something. Yeah, I was thinking about it, Maya said, her voice a little unsure but gaining strength with every word. I'm not sure who I'd go with, though. I'm still figuring it out. The girls laughed, and the conversation shifted to dance plans, music, and what everyone would wear. Maya contributed to the conversation, slowly relaxing into the atmosphere. Her nervousness began to fade, and by the time Nicole walked in and joined them, Maya was already laughing along with the group. As the lunch period came to an end, Maya felt a sense of accomplishment she hadn't expected. She had done it. She had broken through the wall she had built around herself, and in doing so, she had begun to find her place in the world again. But just as Maya was beginning to feel like she could finally breathe, there was a voice in the back of her mind, one that still whispered doubts and fears. What if this was just another phase? What if they didn't really like her? What if they were only being kind because they felt sorry for her? But this time, Maya didn't let those doubts control her. Instead, she pushed them aside and focused on the moment, on the laughter, on the conversation, on the way she was finally beginning to feel like she belonged. As the bell rang, signaling the end of lunch, Maya stood up and grabbed her bag. She wasn't sure what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, she felt like she was ready to face it. She had taken the first steps toward breaking through the walls she had built. And even though the journey ahead would be challenging, she was ready to continue forward, stronger, more confident, and more sure of herself than she had ever been. The days after Maya's breakthrough at lunch were a mix of exhilarating highs and quiet moments of reflection. It felt like something inside her had shifted, a change she hadn't fully anticipated. She had walked into that cafeteria unsure of herself, but by the end of lunch, she had found herself laughing and talking with a group of people who, just months ago, would have been the last ones to include her. But despite the progress, there was a lingering feeling in the back of her mind, like a shadow she couldn't shake off. The fear that this newfound sense of belonging could slip away just as quickly as it had come. She found herself second-guessing everything, even her interactions with Jared and the others. She couldn't help but wonder, is this real, or is it just temporary? The next day, as she walked to her locker between classes, Maya felt a tap on her shoulder. She turned to find Jared standing there, a slight grin on his face. "Hey, Maya," he greeted her casually, his voice warm. "How's your day going?" Maya smiled back, but her heart raced a little. "It's good, thanks. How about you?" "Can't complain," he replied, glancing around the hallway as if making sure no one was listening. "Listen, I wanted to talk to you about something." Maya's curiosity piqued. "Sure, what's up?" Jared looked around again, his eyes flicking to the groups of students walking past them. He took a deep breath, as if gathering his thoughts. Then, in a quieter voice, he said, "I wanted to apologize again. I know I've said it before, but I think I owe you more than just a casual, sorry." Maya's chest tightened slightly. She hadn't expected this. She'd been moving forward, but hearing him bring up the past again was jarring. For a moment, she wondered if the apology was just another way of making her feel like she was still stuck in that place of hurt. "Jared, it's okay," Maya said, trying to brush it off. "You don't have to keep bringing it up. I get it, really." "No," he insisted, shaking his head. "It's not okay. The way we treated you, I treated you, it was wrong. I don't expect you to forgive me right away, but I want you to know I'm genuinely sorry for how things went down. I was an idiot." Maya stared at him, her mind racing. She could see the sincerity in his eyes, but part of her struggled to accept that this apology wasn't just a formality. For so long, she had been carrying the weight of what they had done to her, being ignored, mocked, excluded, and hearing him speak like this forced her to confront those old wounds. "I appreciate that," she said quietly. "It means something that you're saying this. But I also need time. Time to figure out what this all means." Jared nodded, his expression serious. "I get it. I don't want to push you. I just didn't want you to think that I was pretending it didn't happen." I know it messed things up between us. For a moment, they both stood there in silence, the weight of unspoken words hanging in the air. Finally, Jared offered a small smile. Well, I'll let you get to class. Just, know that I'm here if you ever want to talk. No pressure. Maya nodded, watching him walk away, feeling the air shift between them. Something in her stirred, a mixture of relief and confusion. She didn't know if she was ready to fully forgive him yet, but part of her recognized that this was the first step toward healing. As she walked to her next class, Maya couldn't shake the conversation from her mind. Her past with Jared had been fraught with pain and betrayal, but now, it felt different. His apology had been unexpected, and it left her questioning everything she thought she knew about forgiveness. Could she really let go of the bitterness she had held onto for so long? Was it possible for someone who had hurt her so deeply to make amends? The bell rang, signaling the start of class, but Maya's thoughts didn't settle. She sat down at her desk and tried to focus, but her mind kept drifting back to Jared's words. It wasn't just about the apology, it was about the chance to rewrite their story. Could she trust that this was the start of something new, or was it just a fleeting moment that would slip away as easily as it had come? Later that afternoon, as Maya sat in her room doing homework, her phone buzzed with a text. She glanced at the screen, and her heart skipped a beat when she saw who it was from. Nicole, hey, just wanted to check in. You doing okay? Maya hesitated for a moment before typing her response. Maya, yeah, I'm good. Just, thinking a lot. Nicole, about what? Maya, about Jared, actually. He apologized today. Again. It's just weird, you know. I don't know how to feel about it. Nicole's response came quickly. Nicole, wow, really? That's huge. How do you feel? Maya thought for a moment before replying. Maya, I don't know. Part of me wants to say it's too late, but then. I guess there's another part of me that wants to believe people can change. Nicole, I think they can. But it's totally okay to take your time. You don't have to rush anything. Maya, I know. It's just hard to shake the past. You know. Nicole, yeah, I get it. But just remember, what matters most is how you feel. Don't let anyone rush you, not even him. Maya read Nicole's message and felt a wave of gratitude for her friend. Nicole was right. She didn't have to have all the answers right now. The journey to healing wasn't linear, it would take time, and it would take effort, but Maya was willing to put in that work. She couldn't let fear of the past control her future. The next day at school, things felt different. Maya still wasn't sure where she stood with Jared, but she knew one thing for certain, she was no longer the same person she had been when this all started. The girl who walked into that cafeteria months ago, unsure of herself and constantly looking over her shoulder, was no longer here. She had grown stronger. She had learned to trust again. And that afternoon, as she sat with Nicole, laughing and joking like they always did, Maya realized something important: healing isn't a destination. It's a process. There would still be challenges, still be moments of doubt, but with each step she took forward, she was proving to herself that she was capable of moving past the wounds of the past. The future was still uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, Maya felt ready to face it, head on, with strength in her heart and hope for what was to come. The weeks that followed Maya's shifting perspective were marked by a cautious optimism. Though things had improved at school, the weight of her past still lingered like an unwelcome guest. She couldn't fully shake the feeling that one wrong move would send everything crashing down. But for the first time, she was willing to let herself breathe and take each day as it came. It was nearing the end of the school year, and a wave of excitement seemed to sweep through the halls. The final stretch before summer break was always filled with a mix of anticipation and nerves, as students looked ahead to the freedom of the summer months while reflecting on everything they had accomplished over the past year. For Maya, however, the end of the year was not just about school, there was something else on her mind. Nicole had been pushing her for weeks to attend the upcoming school dance. Maya had been hesitant at first, unsure if she was ready to put herself out there. But after Jared's apology and the changes in their relationship, she couldn't deny that a part of her was starting to feel a little braver. Maybe, just maybe, she was ready to step into a new chapter. "I don't know, Nicole," Maya said one afternoon, sitting with her best friend at their usual spot in the library. "I keep thinking about the dance, but I don't know if I'm ready to go. It's not like I have a date or anything." Nicole smirked, her eyes glinting with amusement. "Oh please. You don't need a date. The whole point is to have fun and enjoy yourself. Plus, you've already got a lot of people who are going to be there. I think it'd be the perfect opportunity to show everyone that Maya is back, and better than ever." Maya bit her lip, her fingers nervously tapping the table. "Yeah, but what if people are just pretending to like me? What if they're only nice to me because they feel sorry for me?" Nicole rolled her eyes. "Maya, you've got to stop overthinking everything. Everyone likes you because you're you. And if they don't? Well, who cares? You've already done the hard part, you've grown. And that's all that matters." Maya smiled at her friend's unwavering confidence, but there was still a knot in her stomach. What if things didn't go as smoothly as she hoped? What if the person she was becoming wasn't enough to make up for everything that had happened before? "All right, fine," Maya said, after a moment of contemplation. "I'll think about it. But no promises." Nicole grinned triumphantly. "Deal." The days leading up to the dance were filled with an electric energy that Maya couldn't ignore. The hallways buzzed with conversation about dresses, dates, and decorations. For most students, it was just another event on the school calendar. For Maya, though, it felt like something more. It was an opportunity to prove to herself, and to the world, that she could step into a space without feeling like an outsider. On the day of the dance, Maya stood in front of her mirror, inspecting her reflection. She had chosen a deep red dress, one that made her feel both bold and beautiful. It was a far cry from the dark, oversized clothing she had hidden behind for so long. She had taken the time to do her hair and makeup, something she rarely did, but tonight felt different. Tonight, she wanted to show herself, not just others, that she was ready to step forward. As she finished adjusting the straps on her dress, her phone buzzed. It was a text from her dad. "Dad, how's everything going? Are you still planning on going to the dance tonight?" Maya smiled softly as she typed her reply. "Maya, yeah, I am. I'm nervous, but I think it'll be fun. Dad, I'm proud of you. You've come so far. Just remember, you've got a lot of people who love you. Don't let anyone make you feel less than that." Maya's chest tightened slightly as she read his words. She had always known her dad supported her, but hearing him say it like this brought a sense of warmth she hadn't expected. He had always been her steady presence, and tonight, as she faced her fears, his support felt like the grounding force she needed. The clock was ticking, and before she knew it, it was time to leave. As she stepped into the living room, she found her mom waiting by the door, an excited smile on her face. "You look beautiful," her mom said, her eyes bright with pride. "I'm so glad you're going tonight. Have fun, honey." Maya swallowed, her throat tightening. "Thanks, Mom." With a final look in the mirror, she grabbed her bag and headed out the door, her heart racing with a mix of excitement and nerves. Tonight wasn't just about a dance. It was about proving to herself that she could overcome the doubts, the fears, and the insecurities that had once held her back. Tonight, Maya was taking another step toward reclaiming her life, and that meant something. When Maya arrived at the school gymnasium, the sound of music and laughter filled the air. Students milled around in groups, some nervously glancing at the door as they waited for the night to begin. Maya felt a pang of nervousness in her stomach as she stepped inside, but it was different from before. She didn't feel like a total outsider anymore. She felt present. Nicole was already waiting for her, dressed in a shimmering blue dress that complemented her vibrant personality. As soon as Maya walked in, Nicole waved excitedly and rushed over. "You made it," Nicole said, her voice full of excitement. "You look amazing, by the way. Seriously, everyone's going to be staring at you." Maya laughed, feeling a little more at ease. "Thanks. I was starting to wonder if I was doing the right thing." "You're doing great," Nicole assured her. "Now, let's go dance." They joined a group of friends near the center of the gym, and Maya could feel the energy shift as the music pulsed through her body. For the first time in a long time, she felt light. She wasn't weighed down by expectations, by the past, or by anyone's judgment. She was simply herself, and for once, that was enough. As the night wore on, Maya danced, laughed, and let herself be swept up in the joy of the moment. There were still times when the anxiety crept in, the doubts, the old fears, but they were fleeting, like shadows in the night. They didn't define her anymore. And then, toward the end of the night, when the DJ slowed the music for a final song, Maya found herself standing in the middle of the gym, her breath catching in her throat as Jared approached. "Hey, Maya," Jared said, his voice quiet but sincere. "I'm really glad you came tonight." Maya smiled, feeling a strange mix of relief and nervousness. "Yeah, me too. I'm glad I did." Jared hesitated for a moment, then extended his hand. "Would you like to dance?" Maya took a deep breath, the moment settling in like a calm after a storm. She looked around at the people dancing, laughing, and living in the moment. She realized that tonight wasn't about the people around her. It was about her, about the person she was becoming. "Sure," she said, taking his hand. As they moved to the dance floor, Maya couldn't help but feel a sense of peace. The walls she had built around herself had come down. And though the road ahead was still uncertain, tonight, she was exactly where she needed to be. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? The days following the dance felt like a strange blur. Maya had walked into that night unsure of herself, but by the end, she had danced with her past, with her present, and, in some ways, with her future. The world seemed a little brighter, her confidence a little stronger. She didn't need to be perfect or have everything figured out, all she needed was to keep moving forward. But despite the exhilaration of the dance, there was something else nagging at Maya. It was like a little crack in the foundation she had worked so hard to build. She had danced, laughed, and connected with others in ways she hadn't thought possible just months ago. But as the school year wound down and summer approached, Maya found herself looking inward more than ever. Her father's words about not letting anyone make her feel less than resonated with her, but at the same time, she still struggled with the fact that there were parts of herself, parts she had buried for so long, that she hadn't fully confronted. She could only ignore the uneasiness for so long before it started to bubble to the surface again. Maya couldn't help but think about her relationship with her mother. She loved her mom, of course, she always had. But there had always been something unspoken between them. The walls that Maya had once built around herself had, in some ways, reflected the walls her mom had put up as well. There was love, yes, but there was also distance. Something about her mom's protective nature made Maya feel like she was still that fragile little girl who needed to be shielded from the harsh world. It wasn't a bad thing, but it wasn't a perfect thing, either. It had been weeks since Maya had had a real, heart-to-heart conversation with her mom. Sure, they had spoken about casual things, homework, upcoming summer plans, little details about their day-to-day lives. But Maya couldn't ignore the gnawing feeling that there were things left unsaid between them, things that had been simmering below the surface for a long time. And tonight, she was determined to face it head-on. It was a quiet Friday evening when Maya decided to finally have that conversation. Her mom had just come home from work, and after they ate dinner together, Maya hesitated for only a moment before speaking. "Mom, can we talk about something?" Maya's voice was soft but steady, betraying none of the nervousness she felt inside. Her mom paused in the middle of clearing the dishes, looking at her with curiosity. "Of course, honey. What's on your mind?" Maya took a deep breath and gathered her thoughts. "I've been thinking a lot lately, about us. About everything that's happened over the past few years. And I think there are things we need to talk about." Her mom set down the dish she was holding and walked over to where Maya was sitting at the kitchen table. She sat down across from her, her expression serious but open. "You know you can talk to me about anything, right?" Maya nodded, but the words didn't come immediately. Instead, she stared down at the table, her fingers fidgeting with the edge of her napkin. She had never been the type to open up easily. It felt like a monumental task to let go of the years of quiet resentment, to bring up the unsaid things that had festered for so long. But she couldn't keep running from it. Not anymore. "I know you've always had my best interests at heart, Mom," Maya began, her voice trembling slightly. "But sometimes, I feel like you don't really see me. Like, I'm not really, me, to you. I've spent so long trying to figure out who I am and what I want, but it feels like you're still trying to protect me from the world. And I get it, I do. But I also need you to trust that I can handle things. That I'm growing, even if I don't always have it all together." There was a long pause as her mom absorbed Maya's words. For a moment, she said nothing, her eyes softening as she studied her daughter. Then, after what seemed like an eternity, she spoke quietly. "I'm sorry, Maya. I never meant to make you feel that way. I've always wanted to protect you. I guess, in my way, I've been holding on to you, like I'm afraid to let go." Maya's heart ached as she listened to her mother's admission. She could hear the vulnerability in her mom's voice, and it made her realize something. Her mother's overprotectiveness hadn't been about stifling her or holding her back, it had been about fear, fear of losing her, fear of seeing her daughter hurt in a world that didn't always make sense. "I know you've done it out of love," Maya said softly, her voice steady. "But it's hard sometimes. I don't want to be treated like a child anymore. I want to have the space to make my own decisions, even if they're not perfect." Her mom nodded, her lips trembling slightly as she wiped away a stray tear. "I understand. I just don't know how to let go. I've always been the one to fix things for you, and I guess I've been scared of what would happen if I stopped." Maya reached out and took her mom's hand, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. "Mom, you've always been there for me. I don't need you to fix everything. I just need you to trust that I can handle things on my own." Her mom squeezed her hand back, her eyes glistening with tears. "I'll try, Maya. I promise. I've just been so afraid of losing you." Maya smiled, feeling a rush of emotion she hadn't expected. "You're not going to lose me, Mom. I'm still here. I always will be." The room fell into a comfortable silence, both of them letting the weight of their words settle between them. For the first time in a long time, Maya felt like they were on the same page. They didn't have all the answers, but they were finally talking, really talking, about their fears, their hopes, and their love for each other. As the conversation began to wind down, Maya realized that this moment, this open and honest exchange with her mom, was a breakthrough she had been waiting for. The walls had come down, and for the first time in a long while, she felt like she could truly breathe. That night, as Maya climbed into bed, she reflected on how far she had come. The girl who once hid behind a shell of insecurity was now someone who could face her past and her present with honesty and courage. She had learned that growth wasn't just about moving forward, it was also about facing the truths that had once been buried deep within. And with that, Maya drifted off to sleep, knowing that tomorrow was a new day, one that would bring more discoveries, more conversations, and more steps toward becoming the person she was always meant to be. The summer stretched out before Maya, endless and filled with possibility. No more schoolwork, no more rushed mornings, no more feeling like she had to hide herself to fit in. It was a time to breathe, to explore, to finally take a break from the chaos that had defined her high school experience. Yet, even in this newfound freedom, Maya couldn't escape the quiet hum of uncertainty that lingered in the background. After the conversation with her mom, things had shifted. The walls between them had come down, but Maya knew this wasn't a quick fix. The bond between them had been altered over the years, shaped by misunderstanding, protective instincts, and silent resentment. It was something they would have to rebuild, layer by layer. But the foundation was there, and that was a start. But now, as the first week of summer came to an end, Maya was facing a new challenge, one that she had known would eventually arrive. Her father had been distant lately, more so than usual, and Maya couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. There were times when he seemed distracted, his conversations with her short and clipped. She didn't know why it felt different now, but she sensed that it wasn't just the usual work stress. It was Sunday evening when Maya decided to finally confront it. She had spent most of the day with Nicole, enjoying a rare moment of relaxation at the park, but now, as the sun set and the sky faded to hues of pink and purple, the tension at home seemed to grow thicker. Her dad had been quiet at dinner, barely engaging in the usual banter. Maya couldn't ignore it any longer. "Dad," she said, breaking the silence as they sat together in the living room. He was flipping through a stack of papers, his brow furrowed, his mind clearly elsewhere. He looked up, offering a small, almost apologetic smile. "Yeah, Maya. You've been acting different lately," she said, her voice soft but steady. "I don't know what's going on, but I can tell something's bothering you." Her dad set the papers down, running a hand through his hair as he sighed. "I'm sorry, Maya. It's just, work's been a bit overwhelming lately." Maya watched him carefully. There was more to it than that. She could feel it. "Dad, it's not just work," she pressed gently. "You've been distant. Is everything okay? If there's something you're not telling me, I need to know." There was a long pause, and for a moment, Maya thought he might deflect again. But then he let out a slow breath and looked her in the eyes. "You're right," he said quietly. "It's not just work. There are things I've been dealing with that I've been keeping from you, from both you and your mom. It's not that I don't trust you, it's just that I didn't want to worry you." Maya's heart beat faster as she tried to process his words. "What kind of things?" He hesitated again, his gaze flickering away for a moment, as if searching for the right way to explain. Finally, he spoke, his voice low. "I've been going through some changes at work. The Pentagon, you know, it's not just a normal job. There are certain things I can't always talk about. Things I can't explain to you. And lately, there's been a shift, one that I'm not sure how to navigate." Maya's mind raced. The Pentagon? Her dad had always been vague about his job, but she hadn't realized the weight of it until now. It wasn't just some high-ranking office job, he was involved in something bigger, something more complicated. And it had taken a toll on him, one she hadn't fully understood until now. "Dad, you don't have to explain everything to me," Maya said, her voice softening. "But if there's something you're worried about, I want to help. I don't want you to carry it alone." He smiled faintly, his eyes filled with a mixture of gratitude and sadness. "I know, Maya. I know you want to help. And I'm proud of you for that. But some things, they're not something you can fix. They're bigger than that." Maya nodded, the weight of his words settling heavily on her chest. She wanted to fix things, to make everything better for her dad, but she understood that there were battles he had to face on his own. All she could do was offer her support and her love. "I just want you to be okay, Dad," Maya whispered, her voice filled with quiet determination. "Whatever it is, you don't have to carry it by yourself." For a moment, there was silence between them, the only sound the faint hum of the evening air outside. Her dad looked at her, his eyes softening. Then, slowly, he stood up and walked over to her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "I know, Maya. And I appreciate it more than you'll ever know." The conversation ended on that note, neither of them knowing exactly what the future held. But Maya felt a sense of relief, knowing that her dad had opened up, even just a little. She didn't know what challenges lay ahead, but she was beginning to understand that life wasn't about having all the answers, it was about facing each day with honesty, with love, and with the courage to keep moving forward. The next day, as Maya was heading out to meet Nicole at the local coffee shop, her phone buzzed with a message from her dad. She stopped on the sidewalk, her fingers hovering over the screen as she read his text. "Dad, I've been thinking. Maybe it's time I take you to work one day. There's a lot I can't say, but I can show you what my day-to-day looks like. Maybe it'll help you understand more of what I do." Maya's heart skipped a beat. The Pentagon? Was he serious? She'd always wondered what her dad did, and now, it seemed like he was offering her a glimpse into that world. It was more than she could have ever expected. "Maya, I'd love that, Dad. Thank you." As she pocketed her phone, Maya felt a strange mix of excitement and nervousness. It wasn't just a chance to learn more about her dad, it was a chance to see him in a new light. To understand the person he was beyond the protective father, beyond the role he played in her life. For the first time in a long time, Maya felt like she was standing at the edge of something new. And this time, she wasn't afraid to take the leap. The morning sun broke through the window, casting a soft golden glow across the kitchen. Maya stood at the counter, absently stirring her oatmeal, her mind far from the mundane breakfast preparations. She couldn't stop thinking about her dad's message the day before. A visit to the Pentagon. She had never imagined that she would get such an inside look into her father's world. The Pentagon was a place that loomed large in her mind, not just because of its historical significance, but because of the mystery that surrounded it. Maya had always known that her dad worked there, but the details were always shrouded in secrecy. He would sometimes drop vague references to his office or the workload, but he never went into specifics. And when Maya had been younger, she had assumed it was just another government job, something important but not worth the trouble of understanding. But now, as she was growing older, she realized how much she didn't know. How much she hadn't even thought to ask. "Hey, Maya, you okay?" Her mom's voice broke her out of her reverie. Maya turned to see her mom standing in the doorway, coffee in hand, watching her with a knowing look. "Yeah, just thinking," Maya replied, trying to keep the excitement in her voice under control. She didn't want to sound too eager, but it was hard to hide how much the offer from her dad meant to her. "About what?" her mom asked, a smile playing on her lips. "Dad, he wants to take me to work with him sometime soon," Maya said, her voice barely above a whisper, as if the news was something too big to say aloud. Her mom paused, a slight frown crossing her face. "He wants to bring you to the Pentagon." Maya nodded. "Yeah, can you believe it? I think it's his way of showing me what he does, or at least part of it. I think he wants me to understand." Her mom set her coffee down and walked over to where Maya was standing, her expression unreadable. "I see," she said softly. "Well, that's a big step. He must trust you a lot if he's willing to share that part of his life with you." Maya frowned, sensing there was something more to her mom's reaction than she was letting on. "What do you mean by that?" Her mom sighed and looked away for a moment, as if gathering her thoughts. "Your dad, he's always kept his work life separate from ours. For good reason, I suppose. It's not the kind of job that can easily be understood by the people outside of it. And I think he's always wanted to protect you from the stress of it all." Maya paused, taking in her mom's words. "But why now? Why is he suddenly willing to show me all of it?" Her mom didn't immediately respond, instead taking a long sip from her coffee cup. "Maybe he's ready to let you in, Maya. Maybe he realizes that you're not a little girl anymore. And maybe, he wants you to understand what he's been carrying all these years." The weight of her mom's words settled heavily in the air between them. Maya had always known that her father's job wasn't just a desk job. But now that she had this opportunity to actually step into his world, the magnitude of it all felt more real than ever. "I think it's a good thing," Maya said finally, her voice quiet but firm. "I want to know what he's been doing. I want to understand him better." Her mom gave her a small, soft smile, the kind that made Maya feel like she was seen in a way that no one else could truly understand. "I know you do. Just remember, Maya, sometimes, knowing too much can come with its own set of burdens. Your dad has always carried his weight alone, and it's not always been easy for him." "I get it, Mom," Maya said, nodding. "But maybe it'll make him feel less alone. Maybe it'll help both of us." The drive to the Pentagon was quieter than Maya had expected. It wasn't that her dad wasn't talking, it was that his words seemed to carry an unfamiliar weight. They talked about the usual things, weather, the news, a few light-hearted comments, but there was an undercurrent of seriousness in his tone. Maya noticed it, but she didn't press him for more. She wanted to give him space, to let him decide when he was ready to share more. When they arrived, Maya felt a rush of awe as they approached the towering, fortified building. It looked imposing from the outside, a symbol of power and authority. Maya couldn't help but feel a bit small standing before it. It wasn't just a government building, it was the heart of so many things she had only ever read about in history books or seen in news reports. "Here we are," her dad said, pulling into a parking spot. He looked at her, his eyes soft but serious. "You ready for this?" Maya nodded, her heart pounding with anticipation. "Yeah, I think so." They made their way inside, passing through tight security and layers of checks that Maya hadn't even realized were necessary until she was right in the middle of them. She followed her dad through long hallways lined with offices, each one a different shade of gray and white, the atmosphere sterile but not unfriendly. The further they went, the more Maya felt like she was stepping into a world that was completely separate from everything she knew. Her dad led her to an elevator and pressed the button for a floor that Maya didn't recognize. As the doors closed, Maya looked up at him, her curiosity piqued. "So, what exactly do you do here?" she asked, unable to keep the question in. Her dad smiled faintly, his eyes distant for a moment. "I handle a lot of different things, Maya. Sometimes it's analysis. Sometimes it's strategic planning. There are a lot of pieces that have to fit together, and most of it is classified. But I'll show you what I can." The elevator doors slid open, revealing a long hallway with even more offices, each one filled with people huddled over computers, papers, and phones. Her dad led her into a spacious office at the end of the hall, where a desk covered in documents and monitors greeted them. The walls were adorned with framed awards and commendations, a testament to his years of service. Maya's eyes widened as she looked around. It was unlike anything she had ever imagined. It was still a regular office, but there was a certain air of importance about it, something that reminded her just how high her dad's job was in the grand scheme of things. It wasn't just a job, it was part of something much bigger. "This is where I spend most of my time," her dad said, gesturing to the room. "There's a lot I can't talk about, but I wanted you to see it. I wanted you to understand." Maya nodded, taking it all in. The sheer magnitude of what she was seeing was overwhelming, but it also made her realize just how much her father had given up to be here. He wasn't just a dad. He was a man who carried the weight of the world on his shoulders every single day. And for the first time, Maya felt like she truly understood the kind of person he was. Her dad smiled softly, watching her as she took everything in. "You know, Maya, this is only part of it. The rest, well, that's something you'll never see." "I understand," she said, her voice quiet but filled with gratitude. "Thank you for showing me this." They stood there for a moment, both taking in the gravity of the situation. Maya wasn't sure if her dad would ever truly share everything with her, but this glimpse, this understanding, meant more than she could put into words. It was a step. A small one, but a significant one. And in that moment, Maya realized that understanding her father was going to be a journey, one that would take time, trust, and a willingness to face the unknown together. The next few days passed in a haze of emotions and quiet contemplation for Maya. Her visit to the Pentagon had left her with more questions than answers. Seeing her dad in that environment had been an eye-opening experience. It wasn't just a job, it was a life, a calling, one that she could only understand in pieces. But there was still something about her dad that she hadn't fully grasped, something that felt distant, even as they grew closer in some ways. Maya knew her dad was trying, but there was always a wall between them, one that wasn't easy to break down. For all the progress they had made, there were still moments when Maya felt that old sense of confusion. Why did he keep so much of himself hidden? And why had he kept his work, his burdens, so secret? The following weekend, Maya found herself sitting at the kitchen table, flipping through a book that Nicole had recommended. It was a novel about resilience, about facing difficult truths. It had been an escape for her during the week, a way to distract herself from the swirl of emotions she was still processing after her visit to her dad's workplace. She had planned to meet Nicole at the park later that day, but as she stared at the pages, her thoughts kept drifting back to the conversation she had had with her dad at the Pentagon. She thought about how distant he had seemed in the days since their visit, how he kept getting lost in his thoughts, or would disappear into his office for hours at a time. It wasn't just the job that kept him occupied. There was something more, something that he wasn't telling her, and Maya couldn't help but feel a nagging sense of unease about it. She had always respected her dad's need for privacy, but now, something inside her urged her to press further, to ask the questions that had been left unanswered. She closed the book and stood up, pacing the kitchen, her mind racing. It was then that she realized, she couldn't keep living with this feeling of uncertainty. She needed to know the full story. She needed to understand the things that had shaped her father into the person he was. The phone rang, breaking her thoughts, and Maya quickly grabbed it, relieved by the interruption. It was her dad. "Hey, Dad," she said, trying to keep her voice casual, but feeling the tension in her chest. "Maya," her dad's voice came through, warm but slightly strained. "I hope I didn't interrupt anything." "No, nothing important." "What's up?" There was a long pause, and Maya could tell something was off. Her dad was usually straightforward, but today, he sounded almost hesitant. "I've been thinking about our visit last week, about everything we talked about," he began. "I wanted to check in with you, see how you're doing after it all." "I'm fine," Maya replied quickly, but then paused. "Actually, I've been thinking about it a lot. More than I thought I would. I don't know. I still feel like there's a lot I don't understand. I know you've been doing this for a long time, but I don't know, Dad, there's something you're not telling me. Something's been bothering you. I can see it." Her dad was silent for a moment, and Maya held her breath, waiting for a response. She knew she was walking on thin ice, pushing him to open up, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something deeper was at play. "You're right," he finally said, his voice low. "There's a lot I haven't shared. Things I can't really explain over the phone. I've been trying to protect you from all of this, Maya, but maybe it's time I stop holding back." Maya felt her pulse quicken. Was this finally the moment she had been waiting for? The chance to get to the heart of her father's secret life? "Dad, what's going on?" Maya asked, her voice steady but filled with an intensity she couldn't hide. "What's really going on with your job? And why is it so important that you keep everything a secret?" Her dad's sigh was heavy, filled with years of burden. "Maya, I can't give you all the details. It's classified, things that could put not just my life at risk, but the lives of others. But I owe it to you to tell you more than I have. You deserve that." Maya's heart began to race, a mixture of fear and anticipation tightening in her chest. "I don't understand, Dad. I just want to know why you've been so distant. Why you've been holding so much back. Why do you feel like you can't tell me anything?" "Maya," he said, his voice quieter now, "I never wanted you to be part of this world. I didn't want you to carry the weight of the things I see and do every day. It's not an easy life, not by a long shot. Sometimes, it feels like I'm carrying the whole world on my shoulders. And it scares me, Maya. It scares me that you could get caught in the middle of something you don't even fully understand. Maya's eyes stung, the gravity of her dad's words sinking in. But I'm not a little kid anymore, Dad. I know life isn't easy. And I know you're doing important work. But you can't protect me from everything forever. I want to help, or at least be there for you. You don't have to go through this alone. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Maya's heart pounded in her ears, the weight of her dad's unspoken truth hanging in the air. Finally, he spoke again. You're right, he said quietly. Maybe it's time I stop hiding. But there are things that will always be out of your reach. Things that you won't ever be able to understand. And it's not because I don't trust you, Maya. It's because I love you too much to drag you into this world. Maya swallowed hard, her throat tight with emotion. She wanted to argue, to say that she was strong enough to understand, to help him carry this burden. But the reality was, there were things about her dad's life that would remain hidden, things he couldn't share, no matter how badly she wanted to know. Dad. I don't know if I can ever fully understand what you're going through, she said, her voice thick with emotion. But I'm here. I'll always be here. You don't have to face everything alone. I don't care what the world is like out there. I care about you. That's all that matters to me. There was a long silence, and then her dad's voice came through, softer now. Thank you, Maya. That means more than you know. Maya sat back in her chair, feeling the weight of the conversation linger in the quiet room. She knew that her father's world would always remain somewhat out of reach for her. But she also knew that there was still space for them to connect, for them to understand each other in ways they hadn't before. It wouldn't be easy, but it was a start. As she sat there, Maya realized something. No matter how much her dad tried to protect her from the harsh realities of his work, no matter how much he kept hidden, she had one thing that would always keep them connected: love. It was the one thing that couldn't be classified or compartmentalized. It was the one thing that, no matter what happened, could never be taken away. The days after Maya's conversation with her dad seemed to drag on, but they were different. There was a subtle shift in the air between them. Her dad had opened up, just a crack, but it was enough for Maya to feel like she was on the verge of something big. But as much as she wanted to push for more, she knew she had to let it unfold in its own time. The world outside their small suburban home continued to hum with its usual rhythms, neighbors walking their dogs, kids playing in the street, cars driving by as they always had. Life outside the walls of their home seemed normal. But within those walls, something was stirring. Maya could sense it in her dad's behavior, in his quiet moments, in the subtle shifts in his gaze when he thought she wasn't looking. It was as if he was carrying the weight of a secret that had begun to gnaw at him, and it was only a matter of time before it would come to light. It was Saturday morning, and Maya was sitting in the living room with a cup of coffee, flipping through her notes from the week. The pages were filled with fragments of conversations, fleeting thoughts, and questions she still hadn't gotten around to asking. But as she scanned the pages, her mind kept circling back to her dad, his words, his hesitation, and the way he seemed to distance himself, even when they were in the same room. Her phone buzzed, and she quickly reached for it, relieved by the distraction. It was a text from Nicole. Hey, are you up for a walk later? I need to talk about something. Maya smiled, eager for a chance to get out of her head. Sure, sounds good. Meet you at the park in an hour. Perfect. See you then. She set her phone down and stood up, stretching. A walk with Nicole would be just what she needed. She hadn't realized how much she had been burying under the surface until now, the emotions, the confusion, the fear. But she wasn't ready to face it alone. Not yet. The park was quiet when Maya arrived. It was one of those early spring mornings when the air still had a crisp bite to it, but the sun was starting to warm the ground. Nicole was already there, leaning against a tree, her arms crossed and her face clouded with something Maya couldn't quite read. "Hey," Maya greeted, walking over to her friend. Nicole's eyes flicked up and she smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "Hey, you. How've you been?" "Good, I guess," Maya replied, but she could tell that Nicole wasn't convinced. "What's going on? You said you needed to talk." Nicole hesitated for a moment before stepping away from the tree. "I don't know how to say this, but I've been thinking a lot about what you told me. About your dad. About the Pentagon." Maya felt a sudden tightness in her chest. "What about it?" Nicole glanced around, lowering her voice. "I know you said your dad is working on some important stuff, but have you ever thought about what that really means? I mean, there are all these rumors about what goes on there, and, well, I just don't want you to get caught up in something you're not prepared for." Maya stared at her friend, feeling a cold shiver run through her. "What rumors?" Nicole took a deep breath. "It's nothing concrete, but you know how people talk. There are whispers about your dad being involved in high-level security stuff, things that go way beyond just the Pentagon. There's talk about classified projects, stuff that could be dangerous." Maya's heart raced, her mind swirling. This was the first time anyone had said something like this to her. The idea that her dad could be involved in something dangerous had never crossed her mind, at least not in the way Nicole was describing it. She had always known that her dad's job was classified, secretive, but it had never felt like a real threat, until now. "You're scaring me," Maya whispered, her voice tight. "I'm not trying to scare you," Nicole said quickly, stepping closer. "I just want you to be careful, okay? I know you love your dad, but there are things that could be bigger than both of you. Things you won't see coming." Maya swallowed hard, trying to steady her breath. "But he's been so open with me lately. He told me he's ready to share more, that he trusts me." Nicole nodded slowly. "I know. And that's great, Maya. But don't forget, there's a reason why he's kept so much from you all these years. You have to ask yourself, what is he really trying to protect you from?" Maya stood there, her thoughts racing. She had always believed that her dad's secrecy was to protect her from the dangers of his world, but now she was starting to wonder. What if there was more to it? What if he wasn't just trying to protect her from the world outside? What if he was trying to protect her from the darkness inside himself? "I need to talk to him," Maya said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I need to understand what's going on." Nicole reached out and touched her arm. "Just be careful, okay? I don't want you to get in over your head." Maya nodded, though the unease in her chest had only grown. She didn't want to be afraid of her dad, but she couldn't ignore the gnawing feeling that there was more to his work than he had ever let on. She had to know the truth, no matter how dark or dangerous it might be. That afternoon, Maya found her dad sitting at his desk in the study, the faint hum of his computer the only sound in the room. He looked up as she entered, a slight smile on his face, but there was something behind his eyes that Maya couldn't quite place. "Hey, Maya," he said, his voice calm. "How was your walk with Nicole?" "It was fine," Maya replied, her voice quieter than usual. "But there's something I need to ask you." Her dad raised an eyebrow, clearly sensing the shift in her tone. "What's on your mind?" Maya took a deep breath, gathering her courage. "I know you've been trying to protect me from everything you're involved in. But I can't keep pretending I don't feel like there's something I don't know. Something you're not telling me. Nicole said some things, and I—" "Maya," her dad interrupted, his voice more serious now. "I told you before, there are things I can't talk about. Things that are far bigger than either of us." "I get that," Maya said, her voice firm. "But I need to know more. I can't just keep guessing. I want to understand what you're really doing. What you're really involved in." Her dad stood up slowly, running a hand through his hair. "Maya, this is not a world you can just walk into. You don't understand the dangers, the risks. What you're asking for, it's more than you realize." I'm not a little kid anymore, Dad, Maya said, her voice breaking through the tension. I'm not asking for everything. Just, something. I need to know what's going on. I need to know what I'm really a part of. Her dad looked at her for a long moment, and in that silence, Maya could see the struggle behind his eyes. The wall he had built up for so many years seemed to be cracking, just enough for her to catch a glimpse of the truth hidden beneath. I'll tell you, he said quietly, his voice heavy. But you have to be ready. What I'm about to tell you, it's going to change everything. Maya's heart pounded. This was it. She was about to learn the truth, the real truth, about her father and the life he had been hiding from her all this time. Maya's heart raced as she stood there, waiting for her dad to speak. The room seemed smaller now, the walls pressing in around her as the silence stretched between them. The weight of what he was about to say hung in the air, thick and suffocating. She had asked for the truth, and now she was on the verge of receiving it. But part of her wasn't sure if she was truly ready for what lay beyond that wall of secrecy her dad had spent so many years building. Her dad let out a slow breath, the sound heavy with years of unspoken words. He walked over to the window, staring out for a moment before turning back to her. His face was a mask of emotion, resignation, fear, and something deeper, more conflicted. Maya, he began, his voice quiet, I know I've kept a lot from you. And I know I've done it for your safety. But there comes a point where the truth can't stay buried anymore. You deserve to know. You need to know what I've been dealing with. Maya nodded, her throat tight. She could feel the storm of emotions swirling inside her, but she didn't say a word. She just waited, knowing that the answers she sought were finally about to surface. Her dad walked over to the desk and opened the drawer, pulling out a small, nondescript folder. It was thick, filled with papers that had clearly seen years of use. He placed it on the desk in front of her and slid it toward her, his hand lingering on top of it for a moment. Maya, he said, his voice more somber than she had ever heard it, this is the beginning of it all. This is where everything started. Maya stared at the folder, a deep sense of unease growing in the pit of her stomach. She reached for it slowly, feeling the cool, stiff paper under her fingers. There was nothing particularly special about the folder itself, just a simple manila folder with a few papers inside. But she knew it was more than just paper. It was the key to everything that had been kept from her. Before I show you anything, you need to understand something, her dad continued, his eyes fixed on her. This job, it's not just about the Pentagon. It's not just about national security. What I've been involved in goes far beyond anything you could imagine. And the consequences of these actions are far-reaching. Not just for me, but for you as well. Maya's pulse quickened, but she didn't look away. She had to know. She had to understand what had been hidden from her all this time. She opened the folder, pulling out the first sheet of paper. It was a report, typed in formal language, filled with jargon she didn't understand. But what caught her eye were the names at the top of the page, names of high-ranking officials she had only heard of in passing, names tied to some of the most powerful positions in the country. This is just the tip of the iceberg, her dad said, his voice almost a whisper. What you're seeing here are only the publicly available records. The rest, the real details, are classified, beyond anything the average person could access. Maya scanned the document, her brow furrowing as she tried to make sense of it. The words on the page were difficult to follow, but the context was slowly starting to form a picture in her mind. This was serious. Far more serious than anything she had anticipated. These people, her dad continued, they're involved in covert operations. National security missions that are often shrouded in secrecy for a reason. The work I do, it's not just about overseeing policies or managing resources. It's about protecting the country from threats that go far beyond what the public understands. Maya's stomach dropped as she continued reading. The report described operations in foreign countries, intelligence-gathering missions, and even mentions of threats from other nations. But there was something else there, something darker. There were references to black ops teams and covert operations that dealt with situations so classified they didn't even have official documentation. Her eyes darted to her dad, who was watching her intently, waiting for her reaction. "You've been involved in all of this?" she asked, her voice small but filled with disbelief. "All of these covert operations? And you never told me?" Her dad didn't flinch. He simply nodded, a deep sadness in his eyes. "I couldn't, Maya. Not because I didn't trust you, but because I needed to protect you. This world I'm in, it's dangerous. It's messy. And there are people who will stop at nothing to get what they want, even if it means hurting the people I love." Maya felt a wave of anger wash over her. "But you should have told me. You can't keep me in the dark like this. I'm your daughter. I deserve to know what's going on." "I know," he said softly. "But the less you know, the safer you are. That's why I've kept things from you. I didn't want you to get pulled into this, Maya. I didn't want you to have to face the dangers that come with the work I do. But I'm not a child anymore, Dad," Maya shot back, her voice rising. "You can't just decide what I can handle and what I can't. I've been living in the shadows of your secret life for too long. I have to know the full truth. I deserve to know what you've been hiding." Her dad seemed to pause, as if weighing her words carefully. Finally, he nodded, taking a deep breath. "All right," he said, his voice steady. "You want to know everything? I'll tell you. But understand this, once you know, there's no going back. The world you've known, the one where things seem simple and safe, it won't exist anymore." Maya nodded, her heart racing. "I'm ready." Her dad walked over to the bookshelf and pulled out a thick binder, sliding it across the table to her. "This," he said, "is everything. Every mission, every operation, every decision I've been part of. It's all in there. Some of it is classified to the highest level, but the rest is everything you need to understand what I've been doing." Maya felt the weight of the binder in her hands. She opened it slowly, the pages thick and filled with official documents, photos, and reports that painted a picture of a world far darker than she had imagined. The first few pages were full of coded language and cryptic references, but as she flipped through the binder, she saw more: missions in war zones, surveillance operations, and intelligence gathering on enemies both foreign and domestic. Her dad's voice was low, almost apologetic as he watched her read. "This is why I couldn't tell you before. I didn't want you to carry this burden. But now it's your choice. You can walk away, and I'll never bring it up again. Or you can stay in the game, understand what's at stake, and help me navigate the consequences of everything I've been involved in." Maya's mind was reeling. The weight of the truth was like a physical presence, pressing in on her from all sides. She had known that her dad was involved in something important, something high stakes, but this was far more than she had ever imagined. The question now was, what would she do with this knowledge? Maya sat there, the binder heavy in her lap, its weight bearing down on her in a way she had never experienced. The silence between her and her dad was thick, almost suffocating. She had asked for the truth, but now that it was in front of her, laid out in stark, raw detail, she wasn't sure what to do with it. Her hands trembled as she flipped through the pages, the words blurring before her eyes. Every page seemed to carry a new revelation, a new secret. There were photographs of people she didn't recognize, men and women in military uniforms, government officials with blank expressions, and images from covert missions in foreign countries. There were numbers and coordinates, places she had never heard of, operations she couldn't even begin to comprehend. "Dad, what does all of this mean?" she whispered, the reality of the situation starting to sink in. "What am I supposed to do with this?" Her dad took a deep breath, his face etched with exhaustion. "You're not supposed to do anything with it, Maya. That's the point. You don't need to get involved in this. I've kept you away from it for your safety. You've lived your life without knowing these things, and that's how I wanted it to stay. But now that you know, he trailed off, his voice low. Now that you know, you can never unknow it. Maya looked up at him, her heart racing. So, this is it. You've been lying to me all this time, keeping things from me, and now you want me to just pretend I didn't see this? I didn't want to lie to you, he said quietly. But there are things that go beyond just the work I do. There are forces at play here that are bigger than you or me. If you start asking questions, digging deeper, you could put yourself in danger. I don't care about the danger, Dad. Maya snapped, the frustration rising within her. You've been treating me like I'm a child, like I can't handle the truth. But I'm not a kid anymore. I deserve to know what's going on. I deserve to understand what you've been hiding. Her dad's eyes flickered with pain, but he didn't look away. I know. But it's not that simple. There are things I can't protect you from, Maya. I've tried to shield you from it all, but the more you know, the harder it becomes to keep you safe. Maya stood up abruptly, pacing across the room. The walls felt like they were closing in on her. She had always known her dad's work was important, but this was a world so far removed from anything she had ever imagined. The gravity of what she had just learned was overwhelming. But why didn't you trust me, she said, her voice breaking. Why couldn't you tell me? Why did you have to keep me in the dark? I did it because I love you, Maya, he said softly. I didn't want you to carry the weight of this. I wanted you to have a normal life, free from the burden of what I do. But now, I see I was wrong. I should have told you earlier. I should have prepared you for this. But I didn't know how. I didn't know if you'd understand. I didn't want you to hate me. Maya stopped in her tracks, her breath catching in her throat. She turned back to face him, the pain in her chest threatening to consume her. I don't hate you, Dad. I'm just confused. I don't understand why this had to be so secret. Why everything had to be so hidden. Her dad's face softened, and for a moment, she saw a flicker of the man he used to be, the one who had raised her, the one who had tried to protect her. The one who had always been there, even when things weren't perfect. I wanted to protect you, he said quietly. I didn't want you to be a part of this world. But the truth is, Maya, you are already a part of it. You always have been. Maya's heart stopped for a moment as she processed his words. What do you mean? How have I been a part of this world? Her dad took a deep breath, walking over to the desk and picking up a photograph. He handed it to her, and she stared at it in confusion. It was a picture of a man in a suit, standing in front of a government building. The man's face was familiar, she recognized him from the reports in the binder, the same name listed on some of the most high-profile missions. That man, her dad said, is someone I've worked closely with. His name is Jason Carter. He's high up in the chain of command, and he's been involved in a number of secret projects. One of those projects, Maya, involved you. Maya's stomach twisted as she looked from the photograph to her dad. What do you mean, involved me? Her dad hesitated before answering, his voice low. When you were younger, there were people, government officials, who had an interest in you. They knew you were my daughter. They knew about our family. They saw potential in you, Maya. They saw you as someone who could be useful in the future. But I kept you out of it. I kept you safe. Maya's mind was reeling. Are you telling me that people have been watching me? All these years? Her dad nodded, his expression pained. Yes. But I never let them get close. I never let them involve you. I kept you away from that world as best as I could. The realization hit her like a ton of bricks. Everything she had thought was normal, everything she had believed about her life, now seemed to be built on a foundation of secrets. There were forces, powerful people, who had been watching her, waiting for the right moment to pull her into their web. I don't know what to say, Maya whispered, the weight of everything finally crashing down on her. I don't know what any of this means. I don't know what I'm supposed to do now. Her dad stepped closer, his eyes filled with an intensity she had never seen before. You don't have to do anything, Maya. I've kept you out of it for this long, and I'll keep doing whatever I can to protect you. But there are things that are coming, things that we can't avoid anymore. The world is changing. I've been part of things that are bigger than all of us. But I will not let anything happen to you. You're my daughter, and that means more than anything. Maya swallowed hard, her mind spinning. The truth was terrifying. But the more she learned, the more she realized she couldn't turn back. There was no going back to the life she had known. The truth had already taken root, and it was too late to pull it out. I don't know what I'm supposed to do with all of this, she whispered. But I'm not walking away. Not now. Her dad looked at her, his expression softening for the first time in what felt like forever. You don't have to do anything right now. Just know that whatever happens next, I'll be here for you. We'll figure this out together. Maya nodded, her hand still gripping the binder tightly. The weight of the truth pressed down on her, but she knew one thing for sure, there was no turning back now. She was in this, whether she was ready or not. And whatever came next, she would face it head on. The days after Maya uncovered the truth felt like a blur. The weight of her father's revelations pressed heavily on her mind. No matter how hard she tried to process it, she couldn't shake the feeling that everything in her life had been a lie, a carefully constructed illusion. She had grown up thinking her father's life was a simple one, filled with late nights at the office and the occasional weekend away for work. But now, all of that seemed so trivial compared to what she had just learned. The binder still sat on her desk, untouched for the most part. Maya had flipped through it, read the reports, stared at the photographs, but each page left her with more questions than answers. What was her father's true role in all of this? What did these covert operations mean for the future? And most troubling of all, how did she fit into this dangerous world she had been unknowingly pulled into? She couldn't help but think about the people her father had warned her about, those government officials, those powerful figures who had watched her from the shadows. She had never felt more exposed in her life. But life had a way of moving forward, whether she was ready or not. The world outside her small bubble continued to turn, and Maya had a hard time reconciling the life she had known with the one that was unfolding before her eyes. Her father's phone call had been brief that morning. He told her he would be home late again, that things were getting complicated. Maya didn't ask what that meant. She had long since learned to stop asking questions she wasn't prepared to hear the answers to. But today was different. The sense of foreboding that had plagued her since that fateful day was growing stronger. She could feel it in her bones. It wasn't until later that afternoon when the phone rang that she knew something was about to change. Hello, she answered, trying to keep her voice steady. Maya, the voice on the other end was unfamiliar, rough, and tense. This is Special Agent Scott with the Department of Homeland Security. I need you to listen to me very carefully. Her stomach churned at the mention of Homeland Security. A cold shiver ran down her spine. This was it, everything she had feared. The past few days of uncertainty had been leading up to this moment. She felt a knot tighten in her throat as she listened intently, her heart pounding. We know about your father's involvement in certain operations. And we also know about you, Maya. You need to be careful. People are looking for you, the agent continued. This is no longer just about him. This is about you now. Maya stood frozen, the phone feeling heavy in her hand as her mind raced to make sense of the words. What do you mean, it's about me? Listen to me, Agent Scott said, his voice lowering, urgency lacing his words. Your father's actions have put you in grave danger. We've been monitoring the situation for some time now, but it's getting out of hand. There are people who will do anything to silence anyone connected to the operations he's been a part of. People who won't hesitate to use you as leverage. You're not safe anymore, Maya. She felt the floor beneath her give way, her vision blurring as the words began to sink in. What do I do? What's happening? I can't say much over the phone, the agent replied. But we have a safe house, and you need to get there as soon as possible. I'll send someone to guide you. Don't go to your father. He's not safe either. Trust me on this, Maya. You're walking into a situation much bigger than you can imagine. The clock is ticking. The phone went dead, leaving Maya standing there, frozen. The sense of panic bubbled up in her chest. She wanted to scream, to shake off the terror creeping up her spine, but she couldn't. Everything felt real now, too real. What had started as a revelation, a crack in her understanding of the world, was now spiraling into something far more dangerous. She was no longer just the daughter of a man with a high-profile job. She was part of something much bigger, something that could destroy everything she had ever known. Maya grabbed the binder from the desk and stuffed it into her bag, her hands shaking. She felt a surge of anger rise within her, at her father, at the people who had manipulated her life from the shadows, at herself for not seeing the warning signs earlier. But there was no time for self-pity. There was no time for anything but survival. The doorbell rang just as she slung the strap of her bag over her shoulder. Her heart skipped a beat. Maya, her dad's voice echoed in her mind, his warnings about staying hidden, about not trusting anyone. But it was too late for that now. She opened the door, her breath caught in her throat as a man in a dark suit stepped inside. He was tall, his face unreadable, his movements deliberate and precise. His eyes scanned the room before locking onto her. "You Maya Daniels?" he asked, his voice flat, uninviting. Yes, I am," Maya replied, her voice barely above a whisper. The stranger's gaze was unsettling, like he was sizing her up. "Come with me," he said simply, stepping back toward the door. "We don't have much time. We need to get you out of here." Maya hesitated, her mind spinning with questions. Was this the agent Scott had mentioned? Should she trust him? Should she just stay put, try to wait for her dad? But deep down, she knew that there was no waiting anymore. She wasn't just a bystander in her father's world. She was part of it, whether she liked it or not. Her pulse racing, Maya nodded. "Okay." She stepped outside, the cool air hitting her face like a slap. The man led her to a black SUV parked at the curb. No words were exchanged as they climbed in, the door slamming shut behind her. The vehicle immediately pulled away, its tires screeching slightly as it raced down the street. Maya stared out the window, her hands gripping the edge of the seat. She didn't know where they were going, but she did know one thing, her life as she had known it was gone. There was no going back. She was being pulled into a world that was darker, more dangerous than she could have ever imagined. As the SUV sped away, Maya knew that this was just the beginning. The next chapter of her life had already begun. The SUV swerved through the streets, its tires humming on the pavement as it cut through the silence of the night. Maya's thoughts were a whirlpool of fear, confusion, and anger, but most of all, a sense of finality. The world she had known, the one filled with school assignments, friends, and the occasional family dinner, seemed like a distant memory now. It was as if it had never truly existed. The person she had been before, naive, unaware, safe, was gone. In its place, a new Maya had been born, one who was entrenched in a dangerous reality she could barely comprehend. The man in the driver's seat, the one who had introduced himself only as Agent Price, hadn't said a word since they'd left her home. He simply drove, his hands gripping the wheel with a practiced ease, his eyes scanning the road. Maya sat silently in the back seat, feeling the weight of the unknown pressing down on her chest. The minutes ticked by, but it felt like hours. Her heart raced with every turn, every bump in the road. She wondered where they were taking her, what was waiting for her at the end of this ride. Her mind kept circling back to the conversation she'd had with Agent Scott earlier. The danger was real. It was no longer a matter of just knowing about her father's work. It was about survival. She was part of something bigger now, a dangerous world filled with people who would stop at nothing to control the power they wielded. "Where are we going?" she finally asked, breaking the silence. Her voice was tight, but she didn't care. She needed answers, something to hold on to, something to anchor her in this sea of uncertainty. Agent Price glanced at her briefly through the rearview mirror before his gaze returned to the road. "I can't tell you everything, Maya. Not yet. But you need to trust me. We're going to a place where you'll be safe. For now." "Safe?" Maya scoffed, her voice laced with bitterness. "You think I feel safe right now? I don't know who to trust anymore. I don't even know what's going on. First my dad, then you, it's all too much." He was quiet for a moment, as if weighing his words carefully. "I understand. This isn't easy, but you need to stay calm. You're in a lot of danger, and we're trying to protect you. Your father's situation is complicated, but you're connected to something far bigger than you realize. The people we're dealing with are ruthless." Maya clenched her fists, feeling the familiar ache in her chest. She wasn't sure if it was the anger or the fear, but it was suffocating. She had always been close to her dad, but even she hadn't known the half of it. All these years, he had kept her in the dark for her own protection, but that protection had now fallen apart. It wasn't just about her father anymore. She was a part of something dangerous now. A pawn, maybe. A target, definitely. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked, her voice small, almost a whisper. "Why did you keep all of this from me?" Agent Price didn't answer right away, and for a moment, Maya thought he might not. But then he spoke, his voice low and steady. "Your father tried to shield you from this world, Maya. He wanted to protect you. He thought if he kept you out of it, you'd have a normal life. A life free from the horrors he deals with every day. But now, the reality is unavoidable. You're connected to this whether you want to be or not." Maya's mind whirled with his words, but one thing stood out above all else: she was involved. Her life was no longer her own. It had never been her choice to be pulled into the world of espionage, covert missions, and shadowy government dealings, but here she was, caught in the web of it all. The vehicle finally slowed down, and Maya's gaze shifted out the window. The world outside was dark, unfamiliar. The streets became more desolate, the buildings lower and older, as they entered a less populated area. She felt a rising sense of dread. "We're almost there," Agent Price said, his tone flat, but there was an undercurrent of tension in his voice. He knew they were entering a dangerous phase of this mission, and Maya was right in the middle of it. The car pulled into an underground parking garage, and for a moment, everything seemed to stop. The only sounds were the hum of the engine and the distant noise of other cars in the garage. They parked in a spot near the back, and Agent Price turned off the engine. "Stay close," he instructed, glancing over his shoulder at Maya as he opened the door and stepped out. Maya hesitated, the weight of what was happening crashing down on her. Everything she had known, everything she thought she understood, was slipping away. She wasn't ready for this, but there was no other choice. She had no choice but to follow. She followed him through the maze of concrete pillars and dim lights, her footsteps echoing in the hollow space. The silence between them was deafening. Her mind raced, trying to anticipate what was to come. What had she gotten herself into? As they reached the elevator, Agent Price pressed the button to descend. The doors opened, and the soft hum of machinery filled the air. When they stepped inside, Maya couldn't help but feel a chill creep up her spine. There was something about the place that felt off. Like the walls themselves were hiding something. When they reached the lower level, the elevator doors opened into a stark, sterile hallway. The walls were white, almost too white. The air smelled faintly of antiseptic, and the lighting was harsh, casting long shadows on the floor. Maya felt as though she had stepped into another world entirely, a world that felt both artificial and suffocating. Agent Price didn't say a word. He simply led her down the hall to a door at the far end. He knocked twice before entering, and Maya followed closely behind. Inside was a large, nondescript room. At the center stood a long table, around which several people sat. The moment they entered, all eyes turned to her, and Maya felt a jolt of unease run through her. These people were not ordinary. They were sharp-eyed, focused, and cold, like they knew far more than they were letting on. Maya Daniels, one of them spoke. She was a woman, dressed in military fatigues, her expression unreadable. "I'm Agent Harper. We've been expecting you." "Expecting me?" Maya repeated, her voice tinged with disbelief. "Yes," Agent Harper replied. "We've been tracking your father's activities for a long time. Your involvement is inevitable. We've been preparing for this day." Maya stood frozen, the realization hitting her like a slap. She had walked into a room full of people who had been orchestrating this moment from the start. They knew who she was, and they had planned for her presence here all along. "I didn't ask for this," Maya said, her voice shaky but determined. "I didn't choose any of this." "No one does," Agent Harper said softly. "But now that you're here, we can begin." Maya swallowed hard, the weight of the world pressing down on her. She had crossed a threshold, and there was no turning back. The game had begun, and she was caught in the middle of it. The room seemed to close in around her, and she knew, deep down, that her life as she knew it had ended. Now, the only question was, how would she survive in this new world? Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough?